Hey, you fucks, this is Everyone's Wrong. I'm Dave, aka the Great White North.
And I am Dustin Dark, the all-known Samoan.
And what's up, all known Samoan?
Oh well, pretty much anyone that's listening is probably new. So I've been giving myself a fake name every week now for about a year, and it comes from I joined a podcast that had been running for a few years already, the Wayward Atheist, and everyone had nicknames, and I think it's the gayest shit in the world to nickname yourself, right? So I just didn't have one for a while. And then I thought it'd be funny to just like come up with a fake, like usually racially inspired or whatever nickname. And this is my favorite one that I come up with over the last year. So I think I'm just gonna roll with it. I'll just bite the fag and go ahead and start.
Yeah, a couple of Americans named me the Great White North.
A couple Americans.
Yeah.
Well,
They weren't white either. They weren't white Americans.
I believe you. I believe
Yeah.
that's funny. That's funny,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. So how's your week been?
Uh, Expensive, man. That's back to school shit. God damn it, kids are expensive. I gotta tell you.
Yeah, and you're texting me about the hell you were in just being there shopping with your wife.
Well, like leaving it to the last weekend. First of all, was
The wisest
not
thing,
this
absolutely.
the brightest thing because a lot of sizes are gone, and then it takes twice as long to shop, and there's screaming kids and angry housewives everywhere, and I'm just like, holy fuck. So I was like, that's it, let's go eat.
You
I've
told
had
me
enough.
you told me that you had to drive your wife there. Do you want to tell me
Yeah.
why, or do you want to plead the fifth on that and walk away a clean
Well,
man?
she's she doesn't have a driver's license.
Oh, okay, cool. All right,
Yeah, I'll
gotta.
plead the fifth. um she has her beginners. She's had her beginners for, I don't know, ever since I've known her. It expires, and then she doesn't go back because she's a super nervous driver. It may have something to do with the fact that she's Asian. I don't know. You're asking the wrong guy.
Okay, and the truth comes out. It's because she's Asian and you're a racist.
And I'm a racist. And I'll also, like, I mean, I suppose she could buy herself a car, but I have a
Mm,
big ass truck, and she's
mm.
5'1", and I just no, she's not driving the truck.
No, fair enough, man. I always thought it was like a bullshit racial stereotype, about Asians and driving. But this is what I found out recently. I was watching a really good YouTube channel, ADV China, where it's these two guys that go around to one South African, and and one American that have moved to China, and they go around and they talk about China.
Mhm.
And one of the things they explained is that there's very few, if any, like patrolling police officers, like highway patrol. They don't sit on the side of the road and like speed check and that type of shit, right? They have an intricate system of traffic stops. And if you're not in a major city, you don't really get those a lot of the time. You just have nothing. So if you're not doing something that's going to be caught on camera, you just do whatever the fuck you want. And so that's how they learn to drive. So of course they're going to bring those habits with them. So that's a stereotype that is somewhat based in reality, foreshadowing for later, much later in the episode. But
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, we had a comment about the last episode. It's pretty long. Do you want to get into it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It was 4 paragraphs. I had to do it in 2 screenshots because this guy
I
wasn't fucking playing.
I
Go.
I think I only read the first one. I
Okay.
didn't know there was more.
There was more. So here, buckle in,
Okay.
Dave. Here we go.
Okay.
This is from Brody. He says, "I'm sorry, but this is a horrible response video. Instead of breaking down the video little by little and creating straw man." He did a little typo there. Instead of breaking down the video little by little, you're creating straw man, I believe is what he's saying there. It's better if you. Oh, no. I'm sorry. He was right. It's better if you analyze after a couple of minutes and comprehend the main point of the video. For example, Sticks actually said that Trudeau wants the other world leaders to like him the next few seconds in the video after Dave, if I'm getting the commenter's name right, you did, man, disagree that Trudeau is different than that. Trump, because he wants to be liked around the world, moral standing. Another point, and I would say that we did jump the gun a little bit on that, so it's probably good
What
advice
what
to
what
watch
was
the video
that?
a
What
little
was
more.
that?
There was
What
one
was that
particular
again?
point where where you said that that Trudeau wants the people to like him, that he's not so much an ideologue as someone that wants to be liked. You disagreed with Sticks and said that, and then like the next second after we unpaused, he said that. So like, probably being a little more familiar with the video before we do it.
Sure.
But here's the thing. We did watch the video, right? And you were familiar with it, but it was the main point where he said that Mexico was the main trading partner that.
Let's go back. So just because Sticks said that Trudeau wants to be liked around the world doesn't mean that the rest of his assessment wasn't wrong about Trudeau, like calling Trudeau a coward.
Yeah,
Trudeau's not a coward. He really isn't.
Fair enough. He's had boxing matches with several guys. I believe you even talked about that. Like,
you can Google it and or watch it on YouTube. The videos are there. You can go ahead. And also, he's not backing down from Trump either. I mean, a coward would back down. Go ahead, put it back up on the screen there for me.
Yeah. We were just talking, so I want to show the camera.
Sure. Okay. If Brody listens to this, I doubt he will. But if he does,
I'll link him to this actually.
Okay.
Go on.
If he does, there's no need to be sorry that you didn't like the video.
No. And here's the thing too that I don't understand. Before we get back in this, I'm gonna take it down for another second. This show is in a transitional stage. Like me and Dave here have been podcasting together for about 2 years now. Right? Is that right? Yeah, 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then for about 2 years before that, he had another crew with 2 other guys. We lost one shortly after I joined. Big Black Gay Dave, he's a good guy. I miss him. And then we lost Ed right before we made this change to with video, and we decided to lean more on YouTube. So we're making 2 adjustments. One, we're brand new to YouTube. This may be episode 31. We may have been podcasting for a few years, but we did these long form conversation based podcasts, and YouTube tends to be a little more fast paced and to the point. So like we're gonna try to go for something in the middle. At least I am personally.
Yeah.
And we're getting our legs on exactly how we're gonna do this. And doing it without Ed, because he really was, he helped carry the conversation a lot,
Yeah.
So back to this comment.
Okay, so back to this, and then when he says it's a terrible response video, I wasn't really making your typical YouTube response video. It was Dave reacts to Styx's video. It was more of my reaction to it, and basically what I thought about what he was saying. And when you're podcasting and you're breaking down a video or an audio, because people can't see what's going on it, you do that. You pause, you discuss the point that you wanted to make, and then you press play again. Yeah. So it could be a fair point that on YouTube we shouldn't be doing that. Like I said, though, there's no need to be sorry that he didn't like the format. Now, creating a straw man, he was wrong on almost everything that he said. He was wrong that Mexico is the U.S.'s largest trading partner. He was wrong. Trudeau's not a coward. Okay. Anyways, he was wrong on most of everything he said. I agreed with him on a couple other points. So could you go down to where he says Trump because he wants to be liked around the world? Another point. Start from another point.
Another point. Just because Sticks is a libertarian and is closer to Trudeau politically does not mean he can't disagree with the politics of Trudeau and is required to stand by Canada. So I don't actually understand what he's saying here. Sticks is a libertarian. He would be closer to Trump, not to Trudeau. I think he means just because.
No. I know exactly what he's talking about.
Okay, go
so
on.
what I said was that Sticks and Islam are ideological enemies. That Sticks is actually closer politically and ideologically to Trudeau than he would be to Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Arabian prince.
Saudi Arabia.
So, and he's not required to stand up for Trudeau. I never said that he was required to stand up to Trudeau, but to take Saudi Arabia's side over Canada, who's supposed to be your closest ally, that's ludicrous, man. That there's no excuse, or there's no washing that under the rug. I gotta call that out as bullshit. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, and we should. One of the reasons I feel like we should be compelled to stand by Canada is by honor and dignity and our long-standing relationship, our many battles together, and so forth.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So same with the USA. It doesn't matter if Canada sends troops or help the USA. Bam, that is the past. Oh, man.
That's wrong. Okay, so if like what do we do it for? If it's not for so this is probably the bad term, but it's the first thing that's coming to my head. If it doesn't curry favor when it comes to stuff like this, why would we bother to send our boys and girls to die for American interests? Why would we bother? If when it's time to renegotiate something, or we have a prime minister that you guys may not like, shit completely goes out the fucking window and you start treating us like enemies, why would we bother? And it's not just sending the troops. Look at Iran, how our diplomats snuck your diplomats out before they were fucking killed. Or the fact that thousands and thousands of your citizens couldn't get into your country after 9/11 attack, and we took them in and fed them and clothed them and let them into our homes. So if that doesn't curry favor, why would anybody do it?
Fair
so
enough.
if we just continue to do this stuff for you guys and we don't get anything in return, what we got in return from you was free access to your giant economy, but it wasn't like we weren't giving you anything in return for it. You were getting our natural resources. So like all the other countries that you guys can complain about that you lend money to, you go over there, you interfere in, or not interfere, but you save them from other militaries or from dictators. You haven't had to do that with us. We've been going and saving them with you.
That's a very fair point, I would say.
So I mean, like that. Okay.
Yeah,
anyways,
all right. Back to comment. We have a lot to go over here, and we can't get stuck on this too much.
Okay.
All right.
You go ahead.
It doesn't matter if Canada send troops. That's the past. If the U.S. ain't going to get a good deal that she wants, then the U.S. will make a deal with another nation that's probably a non-traditional ally of the United States. You know what, man? It's one thing to not do a deal. It's another thing to be punitive and to say things like he's going to punish. Right? So that I would say you're missing there a little bit. Why would anyone want to help us in the future if we're going to turn around and punish them because we feel like we want X, Y, and Z? You know, it would be one thing if you guys were being punitive to us out front. And I know there's some dairy shit, but that's so minor. And you know that we did have a deficit with you guys. You guys had a deficit with us, and you're our largest trading partner. It's all nonsense. It's not wise. So no nation perfectly filters who it wants to do business with. Talking to his wife.
Sorry, I apologize.
That's fine. No nation perfectly filters who it wants to do business with. The U.S. has done business with traditional allies like Canada and Western Europe to dictators like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Well, the thing about Saudi Arabia is it's not so much their dictatorship; it's that they're sponsoring world terror and a threat to us. They're a threat to us. They're sort of an enemy, and Canada's sort of an ally. So yeah, I do feel like there should be some sort of favoritism towards allies, and maybe not so much favoritism towards people who are ultimately would love to see our demise rather than just want to trade with us. Like that holds economic weight. I don't know that I want to help a country that wants to hurt us. Go on.
Of course, and this notion that there was a good deal. You already had a good deal. It already was a good deal. Yeah. You guys had tariffs on us, like this whole, like, you guys believing Trump that everything is nasty. Like, okay, so right now, if you don't know, what's the gentleman's name?
Brody.
The two sticking points in NAFTA right now are Chapter 19 and the dairy. So you guys want to abolish Chapter 19 of NAFTA, which is the punitive side. So like if a U.S. company, breaks a trade agreement or the country of the United States or Canada, right now a company can take that country to court. And Canada's taken your country to court and won successfully, and there's cases against Canada as well. Well, Trump wants to abolish that because we've won more in the tribunals than you guys have against us. But you can't have countries that are separated doing business, and somebody fucks the other one over and not have a way of settling that dispute. That's just not
Right.
logical.
If you don't have a court you can go to, then
Yeah.
arms are very likely. Yeah,
What's
let's move
what's
on.
the
Let's
point?
we gotta
Okay.
push. We gotta
Okay.
push. All right. Second half of this. Also, Stick's description of Trump and Trudeau is correct. Trump is more bombastic. You said it yourself. While Trudeau is more diplomatic. Sticks. We've already been over this. Sticks used the word passive aggressiveness, but still makes jabs towards those he doesn't like. Don't know what imaginary disagreement you have with Sticks, except in more time of the video pretending to disagree with him. Here's the thing. We probably should have led with the main disagreement, which is that Sticks claimed that Mexico was our largest trading partner, and that's just not the reality of the situation. And then you go on about socialism and the Mexican president and how it doesn't work, and you're confused why he doesn't note why socialism is bad because the topic of the video isn't about socialism. No, we didn't note that the socialist difference because it's bad. It's not like socialism is bad. I'm God. It's that this guy is actually trying to send people to our country. It's another thing where he's acting like an enemy rather than an ally. He's actively acting like an enemy on one hand. Why would we want to be an economic ally with someone that is trying to hurt us? He is telling people to leave Mexico and come to America. Trump is trying to stop people leaving Mexico and coming to America. That makes them enemies. That shouldn't be that hard to understand. If you want to hear about Stick's views on socialism, yeah. It seems you guys come in ready with the opinion to tear this video apart before listening to what he says. Like I said, we should have led with a strong point. I spent 30 minutes listening to this video and looking for a direct response and didn't get any. That's because it's at about the 35, 40-minute mark. I'm afraid if I spend another 30 minutes, I'll be wasting another 30 minutes of my life that won't get back. All right. Man, and if our style is not what you like, that's fine. But I would say,
awesome.
man, I did listen to what I felt was fair criticism. And stick around. I'll put I'll mark when it starts. I'm doing another response video at the end of this episode. Check it out. Tell me if we did any better on that one, man. Maybe you'll like it. And I have a quick story that's going to relate a little later to a certain extent. My mother, adopted mother, she's like 78, 80 years old at this point. She runs a business selling clothes, very small. 1-2 employees at the most, and usually they're part-time. So she has a customer come in, a black gentleman, middle-aged, that asks her if she watches the news. And she said, yeah, I watch the news most every night, 6, 7 o'clock news, local news. And he goes, did you hear about the whole monkey thing in Florida? Have you heard about this, Dave?
No.
So the way it was initially reported is that, 2 guys are running in Florida. I want to say it's the Senate. I could look it up real quick, but fucking who cares? The point is, Republican gubernatorial candidate. The guy said, don't monkey up this election by voting for the socialist agenda on the other side, right? It's reported that he said, don't monkey up the vote, end of the quote, by voting for black candidate.
What?
That's, you see, it's 2 different stories, isn't it? So this guy asked my, 80-year-old grandmother, about this. And she goes, no, I didn't hear anything about it. And he goes, well, that's because you hear what you want to hear, rednecks like you.
Oof.
Right? And then he starts going on about your president wants to make this country white again. Right? So she had to call the police and make them leave.
Wow.
Like I went to see her today. And I was going to tell a story about how I had a slight disagreement with a customer at work. And he told a coworker of mine that he had his pistol with him and he didn't mind using it. And I didn't even know we had a fucking disagreement. So it's been an interesting week, Dave. Like my coworker goes, she goes back and tells him this was just a misunderstanding. She comes back and tells me the same thing. She goes, he said that he's fine and he's calmed down. It was just a misunderstanding. And I said, I don't have misunderstandings with handguns. I have misunderstandings because I bumped into you. I have misunderstandings because I forgot to set my alarm. I don't have misunderstandings with handguns. That's a fucking threat. Anyway.
Yeah.
you want to get into the main part of the show here, man?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ready to do your segment? Trudeau's a cunt.
Sure, yeah. Let's do it. So I think we'll do the translation first, right? Okay, so for people that don't know, Trudeau was doing a rally in Quebec, and as you can see, he's on a farm, and I'm going to assume it's got something to do with the fact that he's fighting really hard to keep the protections on the dairies, because more than half of the protected dairy is from Quebec. So he's going to keep those voters there. The other issue is that Quebec has taken the brunt, Ontario and Quebec has taken the brunt of the illegal border crossings from the U.S. Into Canada. You know that he put out the tweet that, all refugees are welcome, whoever Trump doesn't want, come here. People took him up on it, but he didn't give the provinces any money, and he hasn't been giving the provinces any money to help out with the cost of feeding, housing, and educating these asylum seekers. So this woman, Diane Blaine, elderly woman, wanted to ask him a question, and the first question goes as such: when will you give the 146 million to Quebec? I'd like to hear your response. I'm a senior, and I'd like a response. Justin Trudeau's first response, which makes no sense whatsoever. So this is Justin Trudeau. Madame, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you very much for your support. I'm very happy to have you here. You asked what we can deliver for seniors, Madame? We delivered an increase in the guaranteed income supplement of $1,000 per month. And then that was a mistake. He corrected himself. $1,000 per year for seniors on their own, the most vulnerable. And then some other male heckler now yells out repeatedly, "We're not in Mohawk territory."
Oh my God.
Which makes no sense whatsoever, right?
So did he pretend like he didn't understand her question, like he misunderstood?
Yeah, he does that all the time. Like he gives completely wrong responses.
He gives his talking points instead of answers. Go. Yeah.
Yes. So pre-recorded talking. Yep. So anyway, so Blaine, that's not what I asked you. We need the 146 million for Quebecers, Trudeau. We invested billions of dollars for Canada Child Benefit, which makes an enormous difference in the lives of families around the province and the country. So again, just a retarded response. Then back to Blaine, the old lady. We're asking you for the 146 million for Quebecers that you gave to illegal immigrants. Trudeau, Madame, one of the things that is important, Madame, in politics is to listen. My friends, is to listen that counts. We are in dialogue.
But he's not answering a question.
So it's the guy, showing that he's not. Well, he's listening, but he's just acting like he's not listening. Male heckler repeatedly again. We are not in Mohawk territory.
Well, who is that? Like a local, like native, or what do you guys call them?
Mohawks.
First
Mohawk.
Nations or local? Okay.
Yeah, First Nations, but his tribe would be Mohawk.
Okay.
Blaine.
We're not in Mohawk territory. What the fuck does that mean?
So Blaine's response. Well, it's just like you're not on the reserve, so shut the fuck up. Basically, because
you're off the reserve. Oh, that's a cute way of saying you're way off the reserve.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cute.
Yeah. Oh no, I actually like that now. Clever.
Yeah, because Trudeau, he's crazy about Indigenous issues, right? Like he's an identitarian when it comes to that. Yeah. So that's why the guy's yelling. Okay, so Blaine's response to his "we must listen" comment, but you are not answering me, and then Trudeau to the male heckler, "Sir, you are in the course of saying things that are anti-Indigenous. It is not very nice. It isn't very polite." Back to the old lady. "Answer me." Then back to Trudeau. "We are here to share the dialogue. I am looking forward to listening to you. Blaine, answer me, Mr. Trudeau. Trudeau, on the condition that you listen to me now, Madame. You have something to say, Madame? Go ahead. Blaine, answer me. I want to know when you will give us back the 146 million that we paid for your illegal immigrants. Trudeau, okay, Madame. And then Blaine, It's us who paid for that, Trudeau. This intolerance regarding immigrants does not have a place in Canada. This intolerance of diversity, you do not have a place here. So now he's telling the old lady that she's not Canadian. There's no place in Canada for an old lady that was born and raised in Canada.
Well, he's saying you're racism, not
You're a
you.
racist. No. He's saying, okay, listen again.
Okay. Okay.
This intolerance regarding immigrants does not have a place in Canada. This intolerance of diversity, and then comma, you do not have a place here.
Oh man. No, you're
Yeah.
right. That's exactly what he said. Holy shit.
Then the crowd started cheering of this. So then the old lady again, hey, Trudeau, Trudeau. Trudeau answers, ma'am, Canada was built by waves of immigration. Not true. That were welcomed by the First Nations. I don't need to explain.
I don't believe I've ever heard such a whitewashing of history like since grade school.
Yeah.
Where Thanksgiving was trading turkeys.
Okay, so there was a reason why the guy was yelling, "We're not on Mohawk territory."
Okay,
Okay,
go on.
so Madame Canada was built by waves of immigration that were welcomed by the First Nations, who showed us how to build a strong society. Okay, and the people who came here, generation after generation, to build stronger communities. This is what makes us stronger as a country. And Madame, your intolerance does not have any place here.
What?
Yes. So what he's saying is that the natives welcomed all the Europeans that
And
came
showed them how to build a
and
strong
showed
society.
and not only that, but then showed the immigrants that did come later on in the 90s when we did open up our immigration more than it had been ever before, that the natives showed them how to build strong communities. I don't know if you know this, but I can go obviously not where I grew up north. There's a reservation attached to the city. Some of my best friends growing up some of my best friends, but literally some of my best friends, and I dated a lot of native girls because the communities
Got a couple of days running around looking like me, huh?
Yeah. But like in the city, you can go. Fuck, I can go half a year without seeing a native.
Do you mind if I do my best Kermit the Frog real quick?
Sure.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna turn something like this. I'm gonna go. I believe Canadian society is built on British common law and
Yes.
and Greek and Roman traditions, but that's none of my business.
Parliament, the British Parliament. Yes. Okay. Man off camera. Yes, she is making threats. Get her out of here. So somebody is now saying that she's making threats. And I know you can't see it, but this guy in a black vest with a white shirt is now standing over her. Man in white shirt, black vest. Are you making threats? And then this is Justin Trudeau. We are liberals here. We know that diversity is a source of strength, never a source of weakness. And Madame, your fear of others, your intolerance does not have a place among us tonight. Thank you very much, my friends. Thank you for being here. Thanks for working hard and uniting people, because we see that there will be intolerance in the coming months. There will be attacks in the coming months. And then the old lady, because the election is coming up, and then the old lady, again, I have another question. And then Trudeau, but you must know that strength, he's ignoring her now, is to unite and not to scream, not to spread fear, not to spread intolerance, Madame. And then Blaine repeatedly, you are intolerant of Quebecois, de shores, which means white French. Male heckler, we're not in Mohawk territory.
Again, he's not giving up on that line.
No, he's not. And then Trudeau, yes, Madame, I am tolerant of all perspectives. It is you, Madame, who is intolerant. and you don't have a place in this beautiful gathering of liberals.
Oh my
Thank you.
God! Those words don't mean what you think they mean, sir.
Yeah.
I am not the bigoted one. Yeah, I'm intolerant of ideas. But you and your ideas are not welcome here.
Hmm.
That's what bigoted is.
And he said he's tolerant of all perspectives, but
Except yours. Get the fuck out of here.
um, yeah. And then cheering, Trudeau descends from stage and begins shaking people's hands in the crowds, playing. You have spread intolerance towards Quebecois. She yells at him. Person in crowd, shut up, damn it. And then Blaine, go ahead and give your hand to this Trudeau, meaning like go ahead and bow down if you're going to shake his hand, basically. Woman in crowd, no, but it's not. It's enough, really. And then woman in crowd, she's going in there. Blaine approaches Trudeau. Mr. Trudeau, you are intolerant of white Quebecers. Trudeau repeatedly, Madame, your racism has no place here. Blaine, answer me. You have no place in Quebec. Do you understand? You have no place in Quebec. Now she's turned the tables on him. Trudeau, excuse me, Madame, I am a proud Quebecer. Madame, I'm a proud Quebecer. Shaking hands. Trudeau, thank you. It's lovely to see you. Cameraman, look at what they're doing with that woman. Look at what they're doing. Officer in baseball cap, do you have a piece of ID with you? No, the old lady, no, officer in ball cap. Now you're coming with me. And then Blaine says, no, officer in baseball cap, come with me. And he's got her in a wrist lock. Then Blaine says, let me go, you're hurting me. Let me go. Look, I'll bruise. Cameraman, she wasn't threatening anyone. She just wanted to speak. Blaine, I wasn't threatening anyone. I have a right to express my opinion to Mr. Trudeau. Let me go. Do you understand? Let me go. Let me go. Cameraman, you have no authority to hold this woman. You have no authority. And then Blaine, hey, you gave me a bruise. Look. Another man approaches wearing a badge. And then there's some inaudible comment. Okay. And then Blaine, what happened? Well, I just asked Mr. Trudeau some questions. That's all. Officer with a badge. And then what happened? The cameraman, she has the right to her opinion. And then Blaine, you don't have to arrest me because I ask questions. Officer with badge, you're absolutely right. Officer with a baseball cap, do you have a piece of ID on you? Blaine, no, I don't. And leave me alone. That's twice you've asked me. Officer in baseball cap, what is your name? Blaine, you don't want to know. I don't want to. And then man in a baseball cap, I'm a police officer, ma'am. Cameraman, I'll stop after this one. Cameraman, what is the number of your badge? We want to have it. Should I give out his number of his badge or?
Yeah, go on, man.
Okay, so officer with baseball cap, 62954. I'm a police officer with the RCMP, man. I am not finished with you. Blaine, yeah, but I'm finished with you because you hurt me. Hey, you hurt me. Look at the bruise you gave me. Man in crowd, we're witness the freedom of expression in Quebec. Wayne approaches the officer again. The other officer basically let her go in the end. But I guess I wanted to read you that exchange because she didn't say one racist thing. Like there was absolutely nothing racist about what she said. She didn't bring race up. For people to assume that immigrant means brown or black, kind of racist.
It is our browns and blacks. Well, not ours. Yeah. The ones that don't belong here. You know, yeah. The ones that are in our country illegally now or in the near future. But yeah, they are mostly not.
They are mostly.
They're not of American stock, or they wouldn't be leaving.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. But to assume that. Anyways,
fair enough, man.
The other thing is like, so she didn't really say anything racist, but he's calling her racist and telling her that she has no place in Canada. So if you have a different opinion than Justin Trudeau, like for me, I'm not racist, but I don't think that people should be allowed to just walk across our border. Yeah. I don't give a fuck where they're coming from.
No,
I think they should have to go to the checkpoint and apply for asylum.
Yeah.
I don't think, and the only reason why they're skipping across the border is because they know that if they go to check in, because they're coming from the U.S., they just get sent back to the U.S. So they're taking advantage of a loophole. Now, I believe that society runs on the rule of law. So I guess I don't belong in Canada. I'm not Canadian anymore. But this is a tactic that they're going to be using in the upcoming election.
Yeah.
And they've already started to call political opponents racist. Anytime you disagree with him on anything, it's like he thinks there's a racist hidden behind every tree. You know?
Yeah, no, I remember we did some stuff a while ago where he called Canada racist and said he was going to expose their bigotry to the sanitizing light or whatever that was.
Anti-feminism is what that was.
Yeah, dude. I stand by the claim I made on Brainstorm podcast 2 years ago when I said he's Canada's Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
Instead of hawking Christianity, he's hawking feminism and fucking new wave bullshit. Yeah, man. So, you had me. First of all, what do you you had me look, I set up everything for the show.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, so I looked up all these clips and things. I didn't get the full translation. You asked me not to, but I wanted to set up a little visual presentation here of where it was and what happened. And so I got the gist that he was saying, your racism has no, power here, has no place here. And I was like, that reminds me of something. And I'm thinking like The Exorcist, no power here. But then it struck me.
You have no power.
That is exactly what the fuck he looks like the and sounds like in that whole clip. The fucking Mad King from Lord of the Rings, you have no place here, you have no power here. It's really pathetic.
Yes.
One, and I don't think Trump has said even anything like that to a citizen.
No, I don't think so.
He's done some bad things, man, but he hasn't told an American that you're not welcome here. He's told illegals,
yes,
illegal immigrants. I'm not just saying they're illegal immigrants, people that have illegally crossed into our country. He's told them they're not welcome, but for a lot of Americans, they're not, and it's their country just as much as everyone else's.
For sure.
And Tell me this, man. If you're in a house, you're there with your family, and there's 5 of you, and you have some visitors, and 2 of the people living there don't want them to fucking stay, right? 2 or 3, whatever. Let's say there's 6, and half the people there don't want them to stay. If you ignore that and expect them to just you're kind of a douche, and that's what's going on here, man. You're forcing people to live with an outside culture that they don't want, man. And Trudeau doesn't have to deal with it, He goes home to his nice fucking. What do you guys have? A palace? I don't know.
Well, he's living in the Prime Minister's cottage right now because 24 Sussex.
I was just poking at your queen. That's all.
I know what you're doing. 24 Sussex has been under renovations. I was just flabbergasted that he told an old lady that she didn't belong in Canada.
Yeah.
I read that over a week ago. So
what do you think about her comments?
About
what? Both of them. Both of them.
$146 million. Yeah, he should be paying for it for sure. He's the one that called them in. Now, I will preface this whole thing by saying it turns out she is a racist.
Okay.
At
least you're nice and honest, yeah.
And I'm gonna.
You should have a right to be racist, though. To be fair, man.
Well, that's going to be my point. My next point, right? So, she is. Well, I can't even say that she's racist. She belongs to some anti-immigration and white nationalist groups. So I don't know exactly. I've never met her, but the evidence points to she may be a little.
Is a bit far. Well, what do you mean by belongs to groups? Like on Facebook or like in life?
No. She's been spotted at rallies in Quebec.
Real life.
Yeah. Wearing the shirts and whatnot. So The evidence points to. But here's the thing, is that in Canada we do have hate speech laws, but we do have freedom of thought and freedom of expression. So her racism actually does have a place in Canada. Right. You telling her that her racism doesn't have a place in Canada doesn't have a place in Canada.
That's true. That actually is the government silencing instead of.
Yeah. My wife is brown. I don't like this woman's racist. She wouldn't like my wife. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I like it. Just so my wife can't drive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The Asian wife can't drive. Yeah. You don't like when people are racist against her. Okay. Yeah.
No, I don't. It's not my fault she can't drive.
It's your job to be racist against her. Huh?
That's right. But like I would defend that. I would defend her right to be.
Oh,
to be
absolutely.
Racist.
Yeah.
So, and I would defend her right to be Canadian. She's lived her entire life.
Right. Right to be in your country as well, and your right to be there. You're an immigrant, so.
Yeah.
Right to be
Actually, my wife is not an immigrant. She was born here.
Oh, excuse me. I just assumed because she's brown and she's from Canada.
Her dad immigrated here.
Right. Right. Fair enough.
Yeah, so she's actually a citizen. She belongs here more than me. Yeah. Anyway, so on to the next one.
On to the next segment.
We had another link. Did you not?
I have an article. Trudeau calls out
yes.
clarity of racism has a place here. Yes. Sir.
I don't know if that was the article that I wanted.
That was the same one. Do you remember the article you wanted? I'll find it real quick.
Yeah, it was Trudeau pays. Companies to hire immigrants.
Trudeau pays companies to hire immigrants. Find that real quick. Do you remember by Lilly?
Yes, by Brian Lilly.
Toronto Sun.
Yep.
Yes, sir. So
I'll let you read that one. It's longer.
I'll have to shape it up here for the particular website. Stop that because I don't care. That is the edge. Okay.
This will blow your mind. This is going to blow your mind. Go ahead.
Imagine a government that says we should use taxpayers' dollars to ensure small businesses hire immigrants over Canadian citizens. Actually, in Justin Trudeau's Canada, you don't have to imagine that. A government report, one originating from the Prime Minister's own department, is calling for government grants to be used to incentivize small businesses to hire immigrants. A policy paper called, quote, Feminist Government, calls for small and medium-sized businesses to partner with government to try to stretch this out a little bit here. It won't go. Businesses to partner with government to help immigrants get a job using what they call a social impact bond. The idea comes from a diversion of the Privy Council office, which reports directly to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Unlike other job grant programs, this one seeks to have small and medium-sized businesses become social service agencies that work with government in a very complex scheme. The proposal includes using money to make sure immigrants, especially immigrant women, not only get their first jobs, but are promoted. Or as the report says, experience job laddering. So
you know what job laddering is?
I think I understand from reading what they just said. So it's like another layer of affirmative action.
Yes.
The proposal includes using money to make sure immigrants, especially immigrant women, not only get their first job. So I assume that is that money going to like job training, or is it going to like bribing companies to hire them?
It's going directly to the companies.
Okay.
And they're going to be setting up a structure in there. They're going to get more money if they promote the immigrants, especially women. So it's worse than it's beyond affirmative action. So affirmative action would be like you have a certain quota, you have to hire, some native, some black, some women, some white men, and like or less white men or whatever, right? But they wouldn't be actually paying you to hire these people, and they wouldn't be treating it like a social service agency, where this would be setting up small and medium sized businesses to be like, you know, your local unemployment office, basically, which is insane.
Yeah.
It's
That's a super social, like socialist type program.
well, it's probably the single most communist thing I've ever seen my country do.
I'm not surprised that Castro's son would do that. Moving on,
Yes.
under the social impact bond model, the government and employers, with input from stakeholders, including job agencies, would first agree on the specifics of what a successful outcome for an initial hire or job laddering would look like. The report reads. A monetary value would be assigned to each outcome to be paid to the employer on completion, and a third-party evaluator would monitor the number of successful outcomes. Okay, let's unpack that from bureaucracies. Thanks, man. Canadian taxpayers would, like, why did you have to put that in there? You could have let that slide. Canadian taxpayers would pay Canadian employers to give special treatment in hiring immigrants for their first job. Then if the business promoted those people, they would be paid special incentives. And all the while, the employer would have to work with government bureaucrats, job agencies, and third-party evaluators to make sure they met plans dreamed up at the highest levels of the civil service. Central planning at its finest. This is super commie, man. Many people that have no idea what it's like to run a small business. Welcome to Justin Trudeau's Canada. I see why you really want this guy out of there, man.
Mm-hmm.
The report was issued earlier this year and sat unnoticed in a dark corner of the Government of Canada website until uncovered by Tom Korski, a journalist with Blacklock's Reporter. They said this is not government policy, merely a proposal, Korski said. But the fact is, it was written by government employees, and they published it as a proposal. And the proposal was exactly that, to reward small businesses by giving them a financial incentive to hire an immigrant over Canadian single mom, college kid, someone looking for a second job, just because of their race and gender, or where they're from, actually.
Where they're from, yeah.
Just for not being born in Canada. I get the importance of making sure immigrants are successful in Canada, and getting that first job is important. I'm the son of immigrants, so is Dave here, is an immigrant himself, and his wife, as we recently learned, that grew up in a mostly immigrant neighborhood. Still, this proposal stinks. It might be in keeping with this government's view, though. They seem to fetishize immigrants, view them as more deserving than Canadians that are already here. That's 100% what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Early this year, Trudeau's Veterans Affairs Minister, Seamus O'Regan, that's super Irish, tweeted, "We needed more immigrants." Seamus O'Regan. We need more immigrants because immigrants were better at starting businesses and hiring people than Canadian-born residents. Well, some of them, I'm sure, but that's a blanket statement.
Well, just keep reading.
Let's see
Lily
numbers.
takes it down.
The numbers, okay, there you go. I said I'd like to see numbers. The numbers didn't fully back him up on that, but he put it out there in the middle of a debate. We have progressive-minded governments across Canada at the federal and provincial level that have made it harder for employers to give anyone an entry-level job. That's true. From boosting minimum wages, soon doubling the Canada pension plan contributions of employers, increasing personal days, and the regulatory burden of hiring anyone, and the government response, give a subsidy. But only to hire and promote immigrants. The Trudeau Liberals keep warning about divisive politics. We'll let them warn them. This is a divisive idea. Small and medium-sized businesses don't need to be co-opted into becoming social agencies of government. Give them a break. Make it easier for them to hire anyone, including immigrants, and this policy problem will solve itself. Go forward with this idea, and Canadians will become resentful about the special treatment. Yes, they will.
Yes.
you,
And rightly so.
You will have your wing of the alt right, and you do have a wing of the alt right. Will
Yeah,
grow.
Proud Boys. Right?
Oh, get out of here! First of all, the Proud Boys are Americans, and they're not alt right. They're like they're Western shows. Like, they have blacks and Hispanics
But
and Asians.
isn't Guinness Canadian?
Yeah, he's
They have
Canadian,
Proud
but
Boys here.
he
They have Proud
he
Boys here.
immigrated to America.
Okay, but they do have Proud Boys here.
They do have Proud Boys. No, look, I sent you a clip one time of like you guys, National Socialist Party leader, like fucking flipping out about Jews and shit on YouTube. So, like,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
You know you have them. Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Most of our up and coming right wing commentators are Canadian.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah, they're running away from Canada.
Yeah. Well, fair enough, man. I'd get the fuck out of Dodge too. Yeah. Godspeed, sir. With us giving you hell from the outside and you giving yourselves hell from the inside, it's not looking good.
Well, that's the thing. It's like that was like one of the things that I wanted to talk about is like from where I'm sitting right now, Canada as it was isn't working anymore. Right? Like so you have Justin Trudeau that comes into office and he puts the strictest regulations on doing business surrounding the First Nations people and environmental standards that are completely basically out of reach. Mm-hmm. He can't get a deal done anywhere in the world. Doesn't matter where it is. So I'm not going to blame Trump all the way for NAFTA because I'll blame him for his tactics against us, but for the actual negotiations, Trudeau is probably, he has blame there as well. But he can't get anything done inside of our country anymore either. Mm-hmm. So the pipeline that we were supposed to get to be able to sell oil to other people other than the U.S. has been blocked in a court because he didn't follow his own fucking guidelines.
Yeah.
Like he set up all this shit and then thought, oh, I'm the prime minister. I don't have to do it. And so he had a federal carbon tax thing that Alberta has a social democracy government in power right now there. And the NDP, and they were on board with it. But since there's no more Trans Mountain Pipeline, she came out and said, so I'm out of the carbon emissions. Deal with Trudeau. So like none of the provinces are getting along. We don't even have free trade inside of our own country. It's 7% to do business between province to province. And with all the problems that we're having with trade, he didn't axe that right away. Wouldn't you think the first thing that you would do is be like, there's no more barriers within this country. The oil is going, the pipelines are being built, the mines are ramped up. Like, it just so and everybody's fighting with each other. Nobody gets along anymore. It's just like from where I'm sitting, it's not working. Now, from the outside looking in, right now everything would look great. We have the lowest unemployment rate in 40 years, but that's because this issue hasn't really hit yet, right?
Yeah.
Like what we're seeing now, it's next year that it's going to take effect. So all this trade stuff and NAFTA, like all of the real effects don't kick in until next year.
Fair enough.
And when it does, we're in trouble because he can't get anything done even in his own damn country.
Immigrate here, Dave. Yo, man, check it out.
Yeah.
A man with your skills.
Yeah.
Housing here is super cheap.
Yeah,
okay?
I get it.
We have a need for guys like you. You could get a nice fucking banging ass house out in the county. You don't have a neighbor, fucking, whatever, eighth of a mile. Your kids can go outside, fucking play, man. Your dog, all you gotta worry about is your dog getting some ticks, And then you
worry about that here too.
And then just drive. You'll never get snowed in again.
That is a legit point.
That got you, man.
That is a legit point.
But
the problem is, I love my country.
No, I get it, man. I get it.
I do.
I get it.
I
know you do. I see your flag behind you. Yeah. I downloaded this waving Canadian flag background for when you talk about your country. It's going to be back there flying every time.
It hurts me to have to speak about like I in the past I didn't like all the prime ministers, obviously, right? But I had a certain respect for them because they were the prime minister,
Yeah.
and none of them fucked up this bad. Like this is a really bad fuck up. Not getting this pipeline done.
Yeah.
This is like
Well, it plays into Russia's hand too. Not only is
yeah,
it not
of
good for
course
you
it
and your
does.
pocketbook, but you're supposed to be supplying European countries with
Yes.
your energy resources, but instead Russia is, and that means if Russia wants to put the screws on Western Europe, they have some mighty big screws to turn.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, and it, they still, like, we could have cut them out of China
Right.
too.
But we're the ones helping Russia right now, right? Am I getting this right? Germany's cutting deals with them to make them rich and to supply their country with fucking natural gas, but we're the ones working with. We've killed 100 Russian soldiers. You know that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know it was 100, but I knew that you killed
I'm
some.
pretty sure it's right around. Double check me on that. We have killed quite a few Russian soldiers since Trump went into office.
Yeah, I know, but you know that all this squabbling that Trump is doing is only playing into their hand, right?
Who?
Like it's
Go on.
like all this squabbling that he's doing with the Western allies.
Well, yeah, it weakens their hand. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
It's
We're stronger
exactly
than-
what.
But here's the thing: if Russia makes a move, though, we're all pulled together just like it didn't happen. I 1,000% believe that. Who's gonna be like, no, we're taking Russia's side? Get the fuck
No,
out of here.
I know that, but I think that it'll be a while before people here are like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, obviously we'll get involved, and like we have to, anyways, by law, no matter what. We're part of NATO. We're part of NATO, so we have to. But it still doesn't mean that there's not going to be animosity. Like this has put a real strain here.
I just chewed ice into the microphone. If that bothered anyone, fuck yourself.
Anyways, you know what? I'm fucking after this segment. I'm over the past like week and a half. Like I'm so sick of hearing the word Canada. It's on the radio all fucking day. Canada, Canada, and the way that fucking some of the Americans say Canada, I can't hear the word anymore. So that's it. I'm done.
How we say it? What do you mean? We spit when we're done? Canada.
No, it's like a hard K almost, like Canada. You know,
How do you guys say it?
just more relaxed. Canada.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like you got a dick in your
Anyway.
mouth. Okay.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Sort of.
All right, man.
Yeah.
You want to head into this break?
Yeah, let's do
All
a
right,
break.
man. There's no hurry. We got like 21 minutes of music here lined up if we have to. But we won't be on that long, but we'll see how it goes. And this is Solid State of Mind. This is our buddy Jason's band. We really appreciate him letting us use his music, man. Really talented too. But here we go, guys. Mute yourself, by the way.
Every 50 years or so, we seem to go through a
My mic was set on pause there. Mics don't pause, Dustin.
It was on mute. It was on mute.
It was on
All
mute.
right.
That is the word I
So
was looking for.
so you're gonna tell me you're gonna inform me a lot tonight in your segment, because to be honest with you, um, this is not a subject that I've really had the interest in diving too deeply into.
Fair enough, and you would have no reason to.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: this isn't a subject that I ever plan to talk about online. You know, like it's impolite, and I know that's weird for me to say, because like I go around talking about difficult subjects, you know, like uncomfortable subjects, like I love it, you know, but this is one that just typically isn't worth the trouble that it brings along with it, right? But okay, so here's the thing: this is I was inspired to do this. I was motivated. I was hashtag triggered here. Let me size up your window here. Keep my notes out of view. Don't want my dirty secrets out there. So I was watching a video from this fellow right here, knowing better. I don't know his real name. He has a YouTube channel that I really enjoy. I really like his content. I found him maybe a month ago. I think he puts out a video like every week, and you know how you come across a YouTuber and they have like the short, like 15, 20-minute videos, and you can watch like 8 or 10 of them in a row, you know? And this guy's got like 3-4 years of content. So like, you know, I can fall into knowing better holes, you know? And I really enjoy his content, and he mostly stays away from politics. They're more like kind of educational, like sociology, and you know, I like I said, and he seems like a cool guy too. I feel like I could sit down and have a nice beer with him. He seems a little more. He described himself as reserved. You know, look at his room here. He in his early videos, he comes off as sterile. You know, that's what I would say. He's starting to get some art and stuff in the background, but at that point, it's just at the very beginning, it was like a concrete room too. You know, that's gotta suck. Anyway, I've lived in much worse myself, but anyway, I like his stuff, but I'm gonna show you the little clip, take another guy's advice on what the big, you know, let you know what the big disagreement is, what motivated me. And you know, you see that right there popped up. Just the fact that he's comparing us to Nazis fucking gets me in the first place. But it's right here at the 1624 or so mark. He says something like this:
Confederate statues, but bringing up the fact that they lost the war isn't one of them. So what is a Confederate general statue for? If you said the Southern identity, you need to ask yourself what that means. Because unlike the Scottish, the Southern identity is rooted in racism. Thinking that the
this is the conclusion of the video. You know, you got like another minute left, and his big punch at the end is that the Southern identity is rooted in racism. Basically, if you celebrate, even if it's not with this flag, right? To celebrate Southern identity is to celebrate racism in extent. And frankly, I think that's a very prejudiced and bigoted way to think. But I take it as a challenge. One, a lot of people don't quite understand what the war is about. Yes, it was about slavery. Succeeding, leaving the United States was about slavery. The war was about the Union, and we'll get into that a little bit. And I want to say here too, I am not in any way supporting the Confederacy. Okay, I do not believe that any race is superior. I believe that different demographics, ethnicities are different in a number of ways. I see them more like, you know, the old Street Fighter games, or like even like Mario Kart. Each character is designed for a way to play it to succeed, right? They're different, but in the end, they're all equal in a different way, if that makes sense. That's the way I see
Sure.
it, more than like everyone is the fucking same and all the races and all peoples are the same. That's ludicrous to me. And we'll get into all of this, but I'm gonna start this video over at the very beginning. Do I have anything else? Yeah, not defending racism, not defending the Confederacy, and I'm not defending slavery, or as they called it, the peculiar institution. But these things are going to come up. And
Who called it that?
it was a euphemism that was very popular leading up to the Civil War.
Okay.
When, like, you instead of saying slavery, they would say the peculiar institution.
Okay.
Which is a way of admitting. And before we get too deep into this, I don't support the Confederacy. It's arguable whether or not they had the right to leave, but I also don't think that we would still have slaves by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, the British shut it down in a different way. They stopped the ships themselves rather than going and killing the people that had slaves. I think we would have followed a track similar to Brazil, and instead of stretching west, we would have stretched further south, creating like an agricultural empire that would eventually modernize just like Brazil did, but would ultimately not be a world power because of being late to the game. Anyway, and of course the world wars would all come out different and all that, but this is an alternative history video. So let's start this guy's video over. One last caveat, and I have to do like 30 of these because else I'm a fucking bigot or a racist, right? It doesn't matter.
Well, you are anyways, so.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. We're going to talk a lot about group statistics, right? Like IQ and crime, and the context that I'm always talking about these in is that you cannot judge the individual by the group, okay? You have to take each person on as an individual and then see what they have to bring and judge them as a human being, right? That's the way that we're all equal. Right, we should all be judged as individuals. It doesn't matter what other mostly white but somewhat mixed and no one knows why or what. It doesn't matter what those people are doing. It doesn't affect me. You're right. Take me as who I am as a person and judge me. And I take every black person, every Mexican or whatever as individuals and see what they have to offer and who they are. So that's the context that I'm talking about this in. All right. I in no way condone group judgment or group violence or anything like that. So with all those caveats out of the way, let's get into this. This will be my first response video. So let's see how it goes.
Every 50 years or so, we seem to go through a racial upheaval in this country. 50 years after the founding of this country was the Missouri Compromise, which just sort of kicked the slavery can down the road until the ultimate clash in the 1860s, the Civil War. But it obviously didn't end there. 50 years later, in the 1910s and 20s, was the golden age of the KKK. This is when most of the Confederate statues that we're arguing about now went up. Another 50 years.
A little context there. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose, but it seems to insinuate that the statues went up because of the rise in the KKK and whatever else at that time. It's more so like 1910s and 1920s. That's the Gilded Age, leading up to the Great Depression. And you also have World War I going on in that time period, 1914 to 1918, unless I'm mistaken. And it's a very patriotic time. And we're going to find out, actually, in just a moment, why military victories would actually bring up a pride in the Confederacy in this type of situations. So let's let him continue.
Went by and we had the Civil Rights Movement with Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers, and the Confederate flag.
Oh, yeah. And most of the statues are copies. New technology came about to make the statues cheaper to make as well, right? So instead of chiseling out, we started making molds, that type of technology. So all sorts of monuments were created during this time period. And we actually finished monuments in D.C. that had been stopped previously because we had the money at that point.
Before the 1950s and 60s, the Confederate flag wasn't really a thing. And here we are again, 50 years.
Okay. To say that the Confederate flag wasn't a thing to the 1950s and 60s, that it went away until the civil rights movement come back, is absolutely not true. And I also take issue with him calling it the Confederate flag. We'll get into that again later, but he talks about that himself, so I'll let him bring it up. So I'm going to bring up this article right now from the Nation History. What was the Confederate flag doing in Cuba, Vietnam, and Iraq? So I'm going to skip down. By the way, this is World War II. Here with the Confederate flag, a bomber going over Japan. Skip down to this highlighted section. But like many discussions of American conservatism, this account misses the role of endless war played in sustaining domestic racism. Starting around 1898, which is just a few years, like the next generation, right? So not the ones that fought the Civil War, but their children, okay? Well before it became an icon of redneck backlash, the Confederate battle flag served for half a century as an important pennant in the expanding American empire and a symbol of national unification, not polarization. And what he's saying here is that it was, let me do the next paragraph here. It was a reconciled army that moved out into the world after the Civil War, an unstoppable combination of Northern law, bureaucratic command and control, industrial might and technology, and Southern spirit. An exaltation of military ideals and virtues, including valor, duty, and honor. Both law and spirit had their dark sides, leading to horrors committed because of either the very nature of the American empire, the genocide of Native Americans, for example, or the war in Southeast Asia. The particular passions of some of its soldiers. And both law and spirit had their own flags. So 40% of the United States military is from Dixie, right? The old Confederacy right now. And it's almost always been that way. We are one of the lesser populated parts of the country, but we join the military in much higher levels, and we tend to fill the lower or the fighting ranks.
Okay.
Right? So starting the very next generation, after the people that actually fought in the Civil War died. So when we invade Cuba during the Spanish and American War, during World War I, during World War II, during Korea, during Vietnam, Southern soldiers were allowed to and very often flew the what they call the rebel flag. When I was growing up, it was called the rebel flag. We didn't call it the Confederate flag, and we'll get into that a little more later as well. But it did not go away. It was always a symbol of what it turned into a symbol at that point of what we were bringing to the table of the Southern fighting pride. And that'll be explained in just a moment. And it's out of order because he's doing the video, and I have to keep up with him. So here we go.
Years later with Black Lives Matter and neo-Nazis. So how the heck did we get here?
I love this, by the way. Get the joke here. Think you should know better than doing. Got a dry sense of humor, I dig.
Before we get into current events, it's important to take a step back and look at the overall picture. Neo-Nazis and the KKK have existed for decades, but they're much more prominent and have much more support now, and something must have caused that. And it wasn't just Trump. So first, let's define some terms. The big picture is xenophobia, which is the fear or dislike of anyone different from you. Under xenophobia is racism, sexism, and Islamophobia. These are all different.
We're not going to split that hair, Dave, but we're going to know. There. We're not going to do it, but it's there, and we know it's wrong. All right.
Okay. It's a made-up word. Anyway,
yeah, we're going to let it slide.
Different, but they sometimes overlap in the case of Islamophobia, which is usually coupled with racism against Arabs. Even though, as I've covered before, there are Arab Christians, Arab Jews, Arab everything else. But unlike disliking a religion or ideology, racism is a dislike of a biological group of people. Yes, you heard that correctly. Race is absolutely biological. It's as much of a social construct as planets are. Even though it's completely arbitrary, we use certain physical characteristics to group together and define them. So let's define race. When talking about human beings, it's a group of people with a shared set of common physical characteristics. Physical characteristics.
He's dead on
that
with
is
all this.
Darker skin, different shaped eyes, You know what they are, okay? Let me be clear, there is no evidence that race is connected to things like intelligence, criminality, or any other behavior. It's entirely physical. Different.
And this is the part of the video that I really wish I could ignore, Dave. But I'm not going to. And this is going to be a very uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people. And I want to stress that take everyone on as individuals before we get into this. So the claim he just made was that that your biology doesn't hold any weight on either your intelligence or your criminality. Okay. Now, criminality is somewhat arguable, but to say that that there is no that biology doesn't have anything to do with intelligence is pretty ludicrous. So,
well, hang on. People like Sam Harris say that biology certainly does have a lot to do with your criminality.
We'll get into that a little bit.
Okay.
We'll get into that a little bit. So, first, when you're talking about intelligence, the best measure of intelligence is IQ. Okay.
Yes.
And if you're willing to deny IQ science, you might as well throw out half of, if not all of, social science altogether. Right.
Okay.
It is very long and very deeply studied, and we use it for everything from job placement to what you do in the military to whether or not we can put you in the electric chair. Right. It shows. There's a couple different kinds of IQ tests, but they tend to lead to the same conclusion, right? There's one that we're going to use in the West, which is, they test everything: your reading comprehension, your math skills, your vocabulary, your ability to predict, upcoming shapes and that type of thing. And then they put all those together, and that gives your IQ score. When you go to other countries, they mostly rely on that second half where they give you patterns and you have to predict the pattern. That way it's not culturally weighted.
Okay.
Right? Because IQ kind of boils down to your ability to assess and adapt to a given subject or situation. Right?
Problem solving.
Right. So these are the IQ classifications here. They at the very bottom, at the extremely low, is 69 and below. That's what they used to call, like completely
Down
mentally
syndrome.
retarded.
Okay.
Just not you cannot function in society.
Okay.
From 70 to 79, you have borderline, which is like Forrest Gump was right on that line. For a reference, fictional reference. Low average is 80 to 89. Average is 90 to 109. So average centers at 100. And they actually moved the scale to keep it on 100.
Okay.
Right, because IQ actually has raised several points since World War II. And we've had to move the scale to go along with it. And there's a few reasons for that. It's called the Flynn effect. If anyone's more interested, Google Flynn effect, read about it. It's fascinating. So high is 110 to 119. So these are people that are going to be able to hold more complex jobs and do more, problem solving. You get up to the 120 and the 129. These are, college professors, authorities in their fields. And then you have the very superior, the genius, the, way out there. So that's how intelligence breaks down. So when you look at race and IQ in America, and I've overlapped these. I'm going to change the opacity here, and I'll bring it back. Oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. Boop. All right. So, Alexa, this is the uncomfortable chart here. At the very end, we have East Asians who center right here around 110, okay? And they're not on the chart here, but Ashkenazi Jews center around 115.
Okay.
Okay. White population centers around 100. Your Hispanic population centers around 90, 95. And then your black population around 80, 85. Now I'm gonna kind of make this transparent again because it gives us a grid so we can better see. It's the wrong one again. I'm gonna get this, guys. Is this a little? Did it again? There we go.
But there could be other factors that
We're gonna get into that.
okay.
We're gonna get into that actually. So I'm just dividing this, and what it shows here. Instead of breaking it down to 5, we've centered it on 100. So, you got your slow, your below average, your above average, and your gifted, right? To break it into a little more easy to understand graph here. Okay. What's interesting about these is when it's not just where the average is, but what's happening on the extremes, right? So when you look on the end of gifted here, what you're going to find is that your Jews are going to feel that, and then they fill the universities, and they fill these higher ranks in banks. That's why they find themselves in such lucrative situations, because they're highly adaptive and intelligent, right? It's not some giant conspiracy.
Oh, I thought it was because they were money hungry, like Shylocks
running the world, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what the white supremacists say, but they're fucking gifted. They're good at it, and they stick together and they work together. Then after that is Asians, and you see that now that they're moving to our country, they're filling our universities, and it's happening in your country too, because they are gifted. They really are. And then white people are very average, and that's also what you see, and down, and it gets less comfortable on that end. Now, and before we say that this is strictly a cultural thing happening in the West, they also line up with global scores. You see that there's a rise in scores coming from Africa into the West. But I would say there's a couple of reasons for that. We don't get a random sampling of people coming from Africa. We get the people that have the intelligence, the capability, and the willingness to migrate across the world, right? A much higher percentage of blacks in America actually migrated here than people realize. And by the way, they perform just as good, if not better, than the blacks in the United States. Even though on average they test better, those that migrate to the United States do the same, if not better. It's a complaint among the black community, actually, that black immigrants do better than the average black students. If you want to look into that as well. And like I said, man, this is really unfortunate. And this is another thing to keep in mind. When you go back to that chart, there are gifted black people. There are gifted Hispanic people. There are quite a few of them, just not quite in the same numbers. And they're out there, and we need to find them, and they should be in positions of power and authority, and should be using their intelligence in their countries or wherever they want to be, right? So I'm 1,000% behind that. Another thing is that intelligence is in no way the measure of a man. Or of a people, right? It doesn't say how loving or industrious or in any number of things, like are you a good family man or anything like that. That's another thing I think why people get so offensive over this is they mistake this as the value of a person. Now, IQ is the highest indicator of economic success, followed by industriousness and followed by openness. So those come together to make a successful person or a successful group, like high rates of that. I know it's terrible. But we were going to get into, I had the Wikipedia page for.
Yeah, but I'm
gonna have to look it up.
Wouldn't you think that I know it shows Africa, so like colonization, not having the proper not having Western education there for that long, diet.
Now diet and things like that, and we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into heritability versus environment and how they play a role. And this has actually been very deeply studied. So I'm going to share this window. Oh, there it is. Window, heritability of IQ. Okay. So the research of heritability on IQ implies from the similarity of IQ in closely related persons, the proportion of variance of IQ among individuals in a study population that is associated with genetic variance within that population. And what that means is this provides a maximum estimate of genetic versus environmental influence on the phenotypic variation, right? And that's the development and how the genes express themselves, like which genes and how they express. That the population as environmental factors may be correlated with genetic factors or heritability. In this sense, refers to the genetic contribution to variance within a population in a specific environment. So I'll tell you what, a better way to understand this is, before we get to these numbers. So we know that addiction is somewhat heritable, right? You know, it runs in families, right? And it's somewhat genetic. Like we know that there are, sets of genes that can lead one to be to be an addict, but they have to also hit an environment to be activated.
Sure,
right?
they're more predisposed.
Right,
Predisposed. Yeah, fuck, I'm losing my life.
So that's a similar way to how IQ heritability works, right? So you have to have the genes, and then you have to have the environment as well, right? So you have to. We don't know what the genes are, but you have to have a cluster of genes to lead one to be intelligent, and then you have to get to live a life, have the experience, have the education, in order to bring them up. So that's another reason why I think Africans. I hate the term blacks, to be honest. I think that's another reason why they do better when they move to the West, is that they're in a better environment to better enact those genes. So like another way to explain that variance, Dave, is like, okay, me. I have the set of genes to have very dark skin, right?
Yes.
But all of my skin is not that dark, right? So I pull up my sleeve, and it's actually very white. Because my sleeve is in a different environment than my forearm is, which is much darker, right?
Sure.
It gets the environment that it needs to bring those genes out. It gets the sun rays. It gets the bombardment of radiation to bring them out. And so it's a similar thing here. So this is how much of it is the genes and how much of it is the environment. So that's what we're talking about here with heritability. I think that's the layman's way to explain it. Does that make sense? Now that I use all three of those analogies together? All right.
Sure.
So in other words, heritability is the mathematical estimate that indicates an upper bound to how much of a trait's variation can be attributed to genes. See? So how much of my darkness is genes and how much is environment is what this is about. There has been significant controversy in the academic community about the heritability of IQ since research on the issue began in the late 19th century. In other words, bullshit. It doesn't matter when a study started, like what generation of people started it. Does the study hold today in today's science? And they do. And that's why they're still here and they can't be refuted, or they would be refuted. That's the one thing about a really good cited academic Wikipedia page, is that if there's a good study to fight it, people come in and put it in. And I recommend people to read this entire page. We're not going to.
I watched a documentary a while back called "The Last Taboo of Science," and it was a black guy that made the documentary on the bell curve and race. And
that's what we were talking about earlier, is the bell curve and the quarters.
Yeah. He made a very a very even-handed video about it. Yeah.
I'll have to check that out, man.
Yeah, it's called The Last Taboo of Science.
So to get into the meat of this, the heritability of IQ for adults is between 57 and 73%.
Okay, right. So that's super low.
Around let's say 65%. Just take a nice middle ground. 65% of how intelligent you are is based on your genetic makeup, and the rest is based on your environment.
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that's super low. I thought you said somebody's IQ was between 50 and never mind.
No.
I didn't hear it.
The heritability of IQ for adults is between
Okay.
57 and 63 and 73. So let's say 65% of your intelligence is based on your genetic makeup, and the other is based on your diet, your education, your ability to sit down and actually fucking study. You know.
Sure.
And this is the other and by the way, to put it on the screen, those are the papers from 2003. This is not ancient science.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the 80% is from 2015. The 86%, 87%. You know, I was saying 50. Okay, that's what somebody's. Oh, in adults, it's much higher. We'll get into that. Genome-wide association studies have identified inherent genome sequences differences that account for 20 to 50% of the genetic variation that contributes to heritability. So they have found some of the genes that lead to it. This is the interesting part. IQ goes from being weakly correlated with genetics for children to being strongly correlated with genetics for late teens and adults. The heritability of IQ increases with age and reaches an asymptote of 18 to 20 years of age and continues at that level well into adulthood. And this is based off of twin studies, the Wilson effect. So what that means, Dave, is that when your child is in school, when they're nice and young, before their late teens, you can have a lot of environmental effect on them to raise their testing scores, right?
Okay.
But how intelligent they are as an adult in the end is far more based on genetics and isn't affected. So we invest all this money in kids in school, and it helps them perform better in school, but it has very little effect on making them more intelligent or capable adults, because it levels off. And we figured this out by using twin studies, right? So you have one twin that is raised in very good environment, good education, good food, good parents, and another in a less capable environment, and the one from the good family will do better when they're young, but they're both eventually end up with a very similar. They will be much more closely correlated than two strangers would be, because it's that much of a genetic change. So when Knowing Better says here that IQ isn't based on or intelligence isn't based on race at all, that's just demonstrably wrong, or that's not what science says at this moment. And if it changes, I'll be happy to go with it, and I wish it wasn't true, and I'd love to change it, but it is what it is, man. It is what it is. And the other end of that, he brought up crime, and this is the FBI crime stats, and they're not pretty. This breaks down by population. The black population in the United States, and this is going to be more important later in the video, commits about 50% of the murders, largely within their own community. And that's hard to say that's faked, right? We're not producing fake dead bodies, and we're not ignoring dead white bodies, right? Mm-hmm. So about 50% of murders are black, about a third of rapes and violent crimes in general, armed robbery, that type of thing. White people tend to drink and drive more often. They have more domestic problems, or at least they call the police about more domestic problems, that type of thing. And as far as that connecting to genetics, you would have to say how much, like what personality traits leads one to be more likely to commit crimes or not. And impulsiveness would be a big one. Amounts of testosterone has a lot to do with it. Another thing that people don't consider in the United States is that the black population is a very young population, while the white population is aging, and a lot of crimes are committed while you're young, right? Like you were a bad motherfucker when you were between 15 and 30, right? Mm-hmm. Right, and that's very normal, right? So the white population on average is much older, and so is our Asian population is much older, so they're naturally going to be committing less crimes anyway. But there have been studies that show that of course, black people have more testosterone, and testosterone is connected to impulsive and violent behavior. That very small percent, I'd say there. And there have also been studies that show that some races, there's disparity in races about delaying gratification, which also would prevent one from committing crimes, right? So what they do is
Yes.
they take children and they tell them you can have one mushroom now, or you can have two mushrooms later, and see what they choose. And it doesn't all come out even, right? And that kind of correlates with the crime stats as well. So probably less so than intelligence is, but we don't have the studies, and I don't know how they would study those quite the same as, we don't have the IQ equivalent of criminality, right?
Yeah.
So it's you won't get, but that's the best I can say about that. So I feel like he knows these things because he's a bright dude, man. You should watch his videos. I recommend everyone to watch his videos. He's really good. I think it's he got in some shit over this video when he made it a year ago with what he said already. He couldn't swing. He's being called a communist and a Nazi in the same comment thread. If you
Wow.
read through it. And you're seeing, keep watching the video because he's coming out very right wing so far, right? Race is real. Race is real.
No, I didn't.
He said race is biological and real.
Well, yeah, it is though.
Yeah, but that's not a left wing position.
Races do have different likelihoods of different diseases, such as cystic fibrosis, more common in white people, and sickle cell anemia, more common in black people. This doesn't mean that any race is better or worse than any other. It just means that we are different, and these differences are biological and genetic in origin. There is no white gene or black gene or Asian gene. It's a set of common characteristics, not
agree
universal.
1000% with all
There
that.
are black people with blue eyes and white people with dark skin. It's as biological as your hair color. Your natural hair color. We're all human, but we are all different. Nobody is better or worse, but we're different, okay? Look, there are many ways to fight racism, but claiming that race is not biological and it's just a social construct is not one of them. But calling things that aren't really racism racist doesn't help either. Like stereotypes. Stereotypes exist for a reason, and that reason is cognitive ease. We all do it. Every single one of you, including me, no matter how hard we try not to. When you first meet someone, you try to figure out what they are, whether it's their gender, race, religion, or whatever. And then your brain brings up a set of characteristics about that group. For example, you find out that they are Jewish or Muslim, and your brain brings up the fact that you probably shouldn't offer them bacon. There are Jews and Muslims who do eat bacon, but most of the time, they don't. And that's why your brain brings up that fact. Most stereotypes are harmless and just help you interact with that person. Some of them are harmful, especially when they incite violence or bigotry.
Okay, I'll stop there. So he's absolutely right here about stereotypes, and the thing that makes them evolutionarily advantageous is that they are largely correct. Most stereotypes speak of a general truth about the group, right? But of course, you do not treat individuals by the group. That is the only way you can navigate this without, I feel like, being crossing a line.
Yes.
And that's what he's talking about here, and I agree with him again. So I back him up on that again.
But most of them are just kind of funny, and that's why they're the topic of jokes. Having stereotypes is not racist. Think about this. When you're calling out someone for being racist, are you calling out the person who thinks that all black people are drug-dealing criminals? Or do you verbally berate the person who just made a watermelon joke? Odds are, most of the time, you're talking to the watermelon guy.
It's 'cause
You're
you
making
can't
them
find the
feel
first one.
horrible and possibly defensive for something that literally everyone does, when they're not really the racist that you should be calling out. Maybe you think that the jokes are harmful. Okay, but thinking that all stereotypes are harmful simply isn't, because everyone has them, because it is socially and evolutionarily advantageous to have them. Speaking of which, racism isn't learned.
What'd you say?
Racism isn't learned. Hatred is learned. Racism is innate. A common saying is that no baby is born racist.
I would change his word here and say, and he'll explain this, in-group preference is innate. racism is learned. I would shift his terms.
Yeah.
Right? Because racism is hatred. It's based off hatred. Right? Racism isn't an in-group preference. It's a distaste. It's a believing that you're superior. To prefer something isn't to believe it's superior, or to hate things that aren't that. So
racist. Well, that isn't true. Babies understand morality as young as 3 months old. At 6 months old, they will start to show a preference and bias towards people with similar tastes and views as them, regardless of their morality. It's as simple as liking a stuffed animal who prefers the same food as them, even if that stuffed animal is a jerk to other stuffed animals.
Okay, and why he brings up studies based on race as well as preferences like food, and I think that's a very important thing to note here, that we have in-group preferences, but race is only one of them. And as you age, Dave, think of how many groups you fit into, right? So you're a podcaster, you're a gamer, you're a Canadian, you're a man, you are white, you're married, you have children, you have an autistic child. What kind of music do you like?
Rock, techno,
That's
lots
another.
different
There's
types.
other groups. You also made techno. That's another group, right?
Yeah,
So
I'm not a gamer. Not a gamer.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a gamer, right? So these are all vectors of intersectionality. To throw that out there, these are all different. These are all different in-group preferences that you hold, right?
Yeah.
So race is only one of them. Is only one of them. Right, and I don't think it's much more harmful than the other ones. Like I'll tell you what, man, I have a lot more in common. Like when I was touring with my metal band and we go play, man, like the black kids in the metal shows were fucking super great, man. I prefer them over like back a spitting redneck most any day, like random rednecks, you know. Have a lot more in common with them. And as far as that goes, a lot of the black kids from the neighborhood I'm from an all black neighborhood. We'll talk about that as well. I have a lot that I get along with them on culturally. While we don't fit together on a racial line, we fit together on a lot of other lines. All right.
Yeah.
I there's nothing wrong with that. And back to the video.
I always include my sources down below, but I'll also include a link to videos which talk about these experiments, including the stuffed animal one. And I know that sounds ridiculous to equate to racism, but it shows that we have an innate, unlearned, base programming bias and preference towards people who are similar to us. And this bias only grows as we grow. By the time we're able to recognize ourselves in the mirror, we will start to show preference and bias towards people who also look like us. Babies as young as 15 months old will start to show racial bias, more specifically in-group racial bias. They will self-segregate and choose playmates of the same race as them. And since babies understand morality and fairness, they will completely throw that out the window and prefer adults who distribute toys unfairly as long as it favors their own racial group. And this is across races, by the way. Since 3-month, 6-month, and 15-month-old babies don't yet have the language capacity to learn hatred, this shows that they have an innate racial bias and preference. And there's an evolutionary reason for that.
I would like to see him compare that to like food preferences as well.
Well, hang on. I don't know if they're necessarily okay. they're definitely showing preference to people that are like them. Mm-hmm. But this is, I don't think they conceptualize that it's race.
No.
Right? Like they don't have the ability to conceptualize that. I think it goes back to tribalism, right?
Yeah, which is in-group preference. It's another word for the same thing.
Yes, but I think that is look, I'm not a biologist and I'm not a sociologist, so I'm gonna step out of my expertise of framing. I go out on a limb here and say that in a certain time on this planet, it would be advantageous for your tribe not to like people that didn't look like you. Yeah. Because chances are they were there to rape your women, take your shit,
and they often bring disease.
and disease.
Yeah, and
So-
he's about to say that actually.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. You did it again, Dave. 2 videos in a row. God damn it.
Well, I
Back
haven't
in
watched this video
I know,
before.
I know.
Today, other groups and races, people who didn't look or act like you, probably had different immune systems and different pathogens than you. So it was
He didn't say the raping and
advantageous to
killing, but-
stay away from them. Now, obviously, that isn't true anymore.
They would eat each other as well.
But for tens and even hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, it was. And patches to our innate base programming takes longer than 50 or 100 years. Now, these are babies, so we wouldn't really call these biases and preferences racism. It's just a funny little quirk. But we would definitely call it racist if they were an adult. And the thing is, these weird, quirky preferences extend into adulthood. You may not think that you're racist. You may even be violently opposed to racism.
A little bit of in-group preference is fine. A lot of it, I would say, would be a problem.
Mhm.
Like you gotta be lying to yourself if you say you don't have any preference for people that A, look like you, B, enjoy the same things you do. You know, like, you don't look like me, Dave, and we're not exactly the same race, but we have a lot of other things in common.
Sure.
You know, and it overrides that by a long shot.
For sure.
Talk about things that don't matter. Anyway.
Racism. But here's an example. You are told to take a seat, and there are 4 chairs. In the far right seat is someone of your race, and in the far left seat is someone of another race. Almost always, without thinking about it, you will sit next to the person of the same race as you. Is that racism, or is it just a vestige of the same racial preference that we laugh about in babies? There are many legitimate ways to fight racism, but saying that racism is learned isn't one of them. Hatred is learned. Having those thoughts, biases, and preferences is natural. It doesn't make you a racist or a bigot unless you act on them. It's the same as sex. When you see someone who's attractive, you might initially have some thoughts that are best left as thoughts. They are natural to have, but as soon as you act on those thoughts, that's when society has to step in. The thoughts themselves are not wrong, and telling someone that they're a terrible person for having them doesn't help. That makes them defensive rather than open-minded. We need to teach that it's natural to have these thoughts, and here's how to overcome them. Not that you're a terrible person for having them in the first place. Likewise, coming up with new terms like microaggression and...
Are you wondering how this is going to lead to fuck the South?
I'm just kind of. I have a problem with what he said with the thought thing.
Go on.
Okay, so like if his thought is, I would like to have sex with that woman, that's okay.
Yeah.
If his thought is, I would like to rape her and eat her face, that's not really seek help.
Seek help.
If his thought is, that child looks good to me, he's a danger. Because those thoughts, those types of thoughts,
you know what? Actually, act on. Well, now that you mention it, I act on most of my thoughts. Like, there's very rarely do I feel like I need to restrain myself.
Like, those types of thoughts do lead to.
That is an interesting observation, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, go on. Go on.
In order to say,
Halfway
you're not
through his video,
really
not
racist,
quite.
you're just a little racist. Doesn't help either. It only muddies the water and makes people who aren't really racist defensive. Or cultural appropriation. Many of us were brought up learning about and appreciating other cultures. We would have days in school where we dressed up and celebrated other cultures' holidays. And that's great, but now we're being told that we can't eat certain foods or dress in a certain way because that's not part of our heritage, and that's cultural appropriation. You can't celebrate diversity and appreciate multiculturalism and be against cultural appropriation at the same time. These things are at odds with each other, and when you do that, it makes people just throw up their hands and say forget it, and retreat into their in-group where they won't be told what to do or how to think. And things like Black Lives Matter don't help either. The movement itself is fine, but let's admit that's a terrible name choice.
Okay. Some people have a problem with the name. I know, Dave, I'm going to keep this short. Some people have a problem with the name. The name is the least of the problems. And if you, Mr. Knowing Better, or anyone else wants to come argue with me about Black Lives Matter, come at me, bro. But the problem with Black Lives Matter, for me personally, I can't speak for everyone, right? Me personally, has nothing to do with their name and has everything to do with their basic claim is that America is so racist that the government lets its cops gun down innocent little black boys that ain't done nothing wrong and should have never been shot, and there was no provoking, and the government never does anything about it, in almost a genocidal type of way. And I think that's a tall claim, and they can't back it up. And there are fucking connections to, radicals and domestic terrorists like, what was her name? Assata Shakur, right? That's my problem. That people that they quote and idolize fled after murdering cops, escaped prison, fled to Cuba, and took fucking refugee status under Castro, and that is their idol. That is the problem with them, dude. Oh yeah, and that they burn down fucking neighborhoods and shit based off of this conspiracy theory. If you look at the crime rates, the violent crime stats match up with the police shooting stats, right?
Yes.
So you actually have a strong correlation between interactions with police officers and fatal shootings with police officers. And there have been studies that have shown that black people resist arrest more often, and that black people attack cops more often, and that black cops are more likely to shoot black suspects than white cops are. Go ahead. And I can back all that up.
There's a study out of Harvard.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, and so the thing is that you're more likely to end up shot and killed if you're a white person if it comes to the point where the guns are drawn, but you're more likely to get physically roughed up if you're a black person.
Now that I believe.
So like the cops are more likely to fuck with you as well if you're a black person.
Yeah.
But when it comes to and I'm not talking about on a per capita basis, because obviously more whites are killed by the cops in the States because there's a fuck ton more of them than there are black people. I'm just talking about what more likely to happen if a cop pulls a gun is the white person dies. Anyways. I'm super racist now too.
It rubbed off on you, Dave. All right, back to the.
You know, my problem is with all this is that, like 2 years ago, man, I was just like, none of this shit. Like, I just didn't care. I don't care. I still don't care about race. Like, I just don't care.
I don't care about race. Well, okay, I don't care except for there are movements based on what I call the bigotry of the gaps, the racism of the gaps, right?
Sure.
Where, white people blame the Jews because Jews do better. White people blame Asians because Asians do better. Fucking blacks blame whites because whites do better. You know what I mean? Like, and it's, I actually think that it's the result of a meritocracy rather than some conspiracy of each race holding down the other, or one holding down everyone else. Right? It's just bullshit to me. And in order to fight these ideas, you have to know these things, for one. Okay? And on the other hand of this, when actual white supremacists, and I'm not a white supremacist, and I'm not a white nationalist, right? People watching this don't know me, when you show up and say, these are things that no one tells you. Why don't they tell you these things? What are they hiding? They're lying to you. I'm telling you the truth, right? It's alluring to people. If you go back through our catalog, you'll hear me talking about stealing the wind from their sails. I talked about it on the last episode, and this is part of it. Like, we have to look at the uncomfortable truths so that we can understand reality. And we know that, man, life is uncomfortable. It's not fucking fair.
Is it possible for you to be a white supremacist?
No, I'm not even white.
Yeah,
I remember joking with an ex-girlfriend of mine who was pretty racist. Like, you think I could join the Confederacy? Like, I have people that fought in the Civil War. I have a book about it. And she goes, like, no, honey, you're not white. Like, you can't join their shit. So back to the video. We're 9 minutes into an 18-minute video.
Because while not its intention, it
how
implies
long
that
this
Black
takes.
Lives matter more than any other race,
I'm filling
which
the
is why
commenter.
some white people have a problem with it. It means that Black Lives matter just as much as any other race's lives, but that's not really a catchy hashtag. Which brings us to white privilege.
Ooh.
White privilege is obviously a thing, but it's a terrible term, which is why a lot of white people have a hard time seeing it. When you tell someone to check their privilege, their first reaction will be defensive. What white privilege? It kind of implies that they get something extra, like a monthly check or a discount at Walmart. When they don't feel like that, they likely fall into one of two categories. They either just went through several bouts of unemployment and financial uncertainty during the recession, so when you say that they have privilege, they think they must be the exception to that privilege. They obviously haven't had it easy. Or they're well off and they worked hard through college to get to where they are, so clearly they don't have privilege either. A good example of what is meant by white privilege is that cops are far less likely to shoot you.
We just went over that.
Yeah, that's not true.
There's a third category that this guy doesn't consider, okay? You know, and I'll make a bit of a concession here. In-group preference is a thing, and while there are several other vectors, race is one of those, and it's one of the most obvious things you can see off the top, okay? It's literally on your face. So there could be something called majority privilege that, you know, class privilege would be a brother of
I often speak about majority privilege.
Okay. So, but here's the interesting thing about this. Let me find this interesting little map here, Dave. Let's zoom way out on this. Have I ever shown you this? I've probably sent you
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
Okay. So, for those playing the home game, I don't know what's wrong with the middle here. There it goes. This is the 2010 census block data, and it gives a dot for each person of each race right here. And okay, so they say if you live in America, you have white privilege. But here's the thing. People are from America. You're born in America, but you don't live in America. Okay? And as far as that goes, even if you're, let's say, from the New England here, you don't live in New England. You're from New England, right? So I'm from Alabama. Okay, so I'm from the United States, and the United States is majority white. Alabama is majority white. But where did I live? Let's zoom in here. I'm from Birmingham. I'm from a particular part of Birmingham, right over here, with these green dots. Okay, so this is the uppity part of town that I could visit and go watch a movie. Maybe take a date out there, act like I have a little class, and then I take my ass right back home. You know, my mother's business, where the guy just yelled at her about being a redneck, is right over here.
Okay.
Okay. I went to school over in this area. I actually grew up. In this little block right here. It doesn't even get a name or streets or anything. That's Wylam. Okay.
Okay.
So if there's a majority privilege, this is where I got my first jobs. This is where I went to school. This is where I met everybody. Okay.
And it's
Who has majority privilege?
black?
Who has majority privilege
Majority
here?
black. Yeah.
Okay. This is where I live. This is my lived experience. I like to talk about lived experience in the social justice left. This is my lived experience. Okay. So not only do those other two categories that the guy mentioned have a damn good argument, but this is a reality as well. Okay. So you really can't call that white privilege. Okay. And here's the thing. I can bring you up news articles where right there in Birmingham, they wanted to invest in the city, bring in some nice apartments and some new businesses. And they held a town hall meeting where several people stood up and said they didn't want to bring in the apartments or the investments because they didn't want to bring more white people to Birmingham. So who is, who has the power in that situation as well? Let's get back to the video.
You might think that's the norm, and it should be. You might think that white people don't get
white
anything
majority's the
extra.
norm,
They get
but
base
not for
level.
everyone.
The problem is that minorities get treated like less than that. So if you understand that, you can understand what white privilege is supposed to mean. As I've said, that's not how it comes off.
Yeah, I gotta piss real bad. But...
All right, we'll just hit another break here. We're at 10 minutes even.
God, these people are so evil. Why can't America wake up and meet them? Donald Trump's not perfect, but he doesn't want to hurt you and your family. Hillary and Obama want to make you poor and pathetic. We have all their white papers. They hate you. They hate prosperity. They hate God. They hate children. And goddamn them now. We're going to find the lever to beat these people, and they're going to be beaten. Look at her shark face. Have to look at her with that demon face. That's a frickin' demon. We're going to have President Linda Blair, people, and I'm not going to go along with it.
bound to my broken feet. A victory for my oppressors. Was there no warning sign for me? It's not how we envisioned. They're growing quite unkind. We failed our desperate missions and lost our fucking minds.
Until the ultimate clash in the 18th.
Do you remember where we were? 15 minutes? I said before I left, and now I don't recall. Are you on silent? Did you mute yourself?
10 minutes even.
10 minutes even. Look at you. Your superior white IQ.
Mm-hmm.
problem is that
I don't know about
minorities
all
get
that,
treated like
It's a joke.
less than that.
Oh,
So
I
if
know
you
that.
understand that, you can understand what white privilege is supposed to mean. As I've said, that's not how
Yeah, I
it
get
comes
what
off.
you're trying to say,
It
dude.
comes
I get
off
it.
as white people being the problem because they get something extra that they shouldn't. So to people who have already retreated into their in-group and every time they look out, they're told that they're part of the problem, well, look, I don't need a psych study to prove this. We already have a larger sample size than we could ever hope for. And guess what? Trump won. And while not everyone who voted for Trump is a racist, not everyone who voted for Trump is a white supremacist, many of them roll their eyes at social justice and political correctness. Many of them are just tired of being told what to say and that they are the problem. Of course, political correctness and social justice aren't solely to blame, but if they were working as intended, he wouldn't have been elected. So we ignore them as contributing factors at our own peril. And obviously the neo-Nazis and the KKK have existed long before Trump, but they are oddly more popular than you would expect if social justice was working. So you end up with things like the Unite the Right rally last weekend. What, did you think I wasn't going to talk about this?
And here comes fuck the South. If you're wondering how he's going to work it in, this is how he works it. Because that is the point of this video, is fuck the South. Just plain racist.
Let's make one thing clear. This wasn't some spontaneous grassroots demonstration.
He's right.
This was a planned rally by white supremacists and Nazis. Yeah, technically they're
Yeah,
not
we know
Nazis.
because we
they're not members
interviewed one.
Yeah.
of the German National Socialist Party. So fine, they're wannabe Nazis or neo-Nazis. It doesn't matter. When you do
Or as I call them, at least holding the door open for Nazis.
things like this and carry flags like this, you're a Nazi. And they weren't just some fringe...
Well, just pause for a second.
I want to show something right there, too.
It was a planned rally by white supremacists and
wanna catch it.
Nazis. Yeah, technically they're not Nazis. They're not members of the German National Socialist Party. So fine, they're wannabe Nazis or neo-Nazis. It doesn't matter. When you do things like this and carry flags like this...
Go on.
I've forgotten now.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just that moment is going to be important later. Notice there's an American flag there.
Yeah.
You're a Nazi. And they weren't just some fringe group that showed up uninvited. These were the guys who got the permits to hold this rally.
He's correct.
So if you
Sorry,
were
I
there
messed
to
up your
just
thought there.
defend our history, as soon as you saw those flags, you should have walked away. But I digress.
And I also condone the fucking Unite the Right rally, both of them. We fucking laughed at the other one last week.
Yeah. So here I've remembered my thought.
Okay.
In the same way that the SJWs that would usher in the communists would be the first to get the boot or the gulags, as it were.
The useful idiots.
The fake Nazis would be in the same situation when it came to the real Nazis. Right? They wouldn't be Nazi enough for them.
Right. That's what I meant by holding the door open. For
Yeah,
them.
yeah, but they would be the first to.
Yeah, I always speak in
Get them.
metaphors. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we watched that one KGB defector that called them useful idiots. And that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, but in the same light on the right, like the alt-right and
No, yeah, no, I agree.
the white supremacists that say that they want to live separate, but they don't actually want to commit genocide. They would be the first to go because the people that do want the genocide would not want them in their party.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, go on.
If you want to know more about the rally itself, I'll put a link to the Vice News segment down below.
Good segment.
Consider it required viewing. They wanted to show that they're not just an internet meme, that they have real numbers and a clear message. They even say that they want to use ethnic cleansing in order to create an ethno-state. It will make you angry. And it should make you angry. This wasn't a rally to defend a statue, even though that was the stated purpose. I've discussed this before, but the issue has come boiling up again. It's time to drop the Confederate stuff. As I've discussed on this channel several times before, the Confederacy existed for one purpose: to keep slavery. That point isn't in dispute.
That is why, that's the reason the Confederate government chose to leave. Okay? So that is indisputable.
It actually makes me quite angry to see people defending Robert E. Lee by saying that he abhorred slavery, by using the same quote that you know what? Here, this is a popular meme on Facebook, and by that quote, yeah, it sure sounds like he dislikes slavery. But they're cutting off the next several sentences, like, I think it is a greater evil to the white than to the colored race. The blacks are immeasurably better off here than in Africa, morally, physically, and socially. It goes on.
Okay, that is not a statement that I could in any way defend, right? And let's keep in mind that when we are looking at the past, we cannot judge the past by today's moral lens. Okay.
Of course.
So you have to judge them, and still looking through their lens, they are Johnny-come-latelys. Okay, they fought on the wrong side of a moral movement, and that's nothing to be proud of. Okay, but I do not think in any way that is why Robert E. Lee is such an admired general. And I think I can make a good case to you, Dave, particularly as to why. This is, he was actually supposed to be a Union general, and he retired to fight for the Confederacy. Okay? And this is his quote as to why. So Robert E. Lee, one of the resigning officers, who had initially been offered the assignment as commander of a field army to suppress the rebellion, Lee disapproved of secession, but refused to bear arms against his native state, Virginia, and resigned to accept the position as commander of Virginia CS forces. He eventually became the commander of the Confederate Army. Okay? So this is a man who, when ordered to bring violence onto his native people on behest of a federal government, refused and joined his people. Do you think
that seems pretty solid logic.
That might garner a little respect from the people of his state and the army that he led. Okay.
Well, it should if it didn't.
If it doesn't, it should. Right here. Here's another quote. What a cruel thing war is, to fill our hearts with hatred instead of love for our neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to touch back on something on the quote that he read. Even though it was prefaced with that other stuff, wouldn't you think, in the times and the place that he was, that would be pretty, like you would think that some of the slave masters would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? These are not human beings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't want to use the term progressive, but it would certainly show a different thought process than a lot of the other people.
An abolitionist bent.
Yeah.
To his thinking. While I find, and man, you want to talk about stepping on a limb, say, here's a hot take for you, man. This one might get me hung. While his statement about it being a favor to bring blacks to America, that's a terrible thing to say at that time while they were in slavery, right? And for several generations since. But you'd have trouble finding many African Americans that would like to go back right now.
Oh well, that's neither here
nor there. But there's a hot take that might get my fucking balls chopped off there. Here's another quote. I brought in a few. If you have any fault to find with anyone, tell him, not others, of what you complain. There is no more dangerous experiment than that of undertaking to be one thing before a man's face and another behind his back. He just seems like a respectable man, doesn't he, Dave? Mm-hmm. Here's a couple more. I have fought against the people of the North because I believe they were seeking to wrest from the South its dearest rights, and that is to succeed. That is not to have slaves.
Mm-hmm.
That's of self-governance. But I have never cherished towards them bitter or vindictive feelings, and I have never seen the day when I did not pray for them. So this is after the war. He's being reconciliatory against the North. A union can only be maintained by swords and bayonets, a union that can only be maintained by swords and bayonets has no charm for me. If the union is dissolved and government disrupted, I shall return to my native state and share the miseries of my people, and save in defense will draw my sword on none. Here's one more. The war was an unnecessary condition of affairs and might have been avoided if forbearance and wisdom had been practiced on both sides. You think this might be why we have some statues of the guy?
Yeah, I would say. We're having similar issues with statues, and
that's just about to come up. That's my next segment that he's going to walk us into.
And it gets way worse. Link to his full quote down below. But he was very pro-slavery. Or they'll show this one. Yes, Grant owned slaves through his wife's estate. You know who else did? Robert E. Lee. He owned his own slaves, but then inherited more through his wife's estate. He eventually freed them in 1862, in the middle of the Civil War. But I also really enjoy this meme, because yes, there is a Lenin statue in Seattle.
Hang on.
But the people there have...
Hang on. 1 second. Okay, now I'm not going to say that it's... Jesus Christ. Owning people is terrible. Retarded. It's terrible. It's absolutely retarded.
Bad, McCall.
But you can't say he freed them. They were in the middle of a civil war. Like it's a flippant, no big deal that he freed them.
He freed them in the middle of Civil War, and we'll get to all of that a little bit later too. You're sitting up straighter earlier, Dave. Can you give me a better posture?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Give me work.
There you go. Is that better?
I slouched last episode. I'm trying to keep my posture going. Look at what you got
maximum effort.
Dude,
there you go.
What's the shirt? Who is that?
Who do you think it is?
Deadpool. Deadpool. Okay, I just watched Deadpool too. Pretty good. All right.
Yeah.
By the way, this Lenin statue, he's making a good point. It's on private property, but you know what? And people do complain about it, but you know what hasn't happened? No one's ripped it down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? No one's fucked it up, and it's not the only one. BT dubs.
Been complaining about it since it went up. But it's on private property, so it's much harder to take down, unlike the Lee statues, which are on public property. And that's part of the problem. These statues went up in public places mostly in the 1910s and 20s, during the heyday of the KKK.
Already covered that.
As signals to black people to know your place, or at least that's how they saw them. As I said in the beginning of the video, 50 years later during the Civil Rights Movement, the Confederate flag became a thing. Obviously it
Except the Confederate flag was always used by the people, and once again, it's not the Confederate flag, and he's about to get it.
Existed during the Confederacy, but it disappeared for almost 100 years. And as you should know, this isn't the Confederate flag. This is the stars and bars. So, what the heck is this?
You know that?
No.
It's the Confederate battle flag and naval ensign. Similar to this, actually. Do you know what this is? It's not just the top corner of the US flag, it's the naval ensign, or it was until 2002. It's what was flown on the back of ships to tell everyone that this is an American ship. If a picture tells 1,000...
Okay. So this is it's not the Confederate flag. It is the flag that was used for the soldiers fighting under Lee, and eventually for all the fighting soldiers. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it is not a monument to the Confederacy. It's a monument to the soldiers that fought and died. Okay? So I'm going a little deeper into this. The people fighting in the South were conscripted. A lot of them, right? You were immune from conscription if you owned slaves or if you had money to pay your way out. Okay. So
why hang on. Okay, this is fucking crazy now. Why, if you own slaves,
so you can keep the economy going?
Okay.
That was the reason they demanded slaves anyway. Is to float the economy.
So the poor people that couldn't afford slaves.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's not a very good look for.
To the point that the soldiers called it the rich man's war, the poor man's fight. on the Union side, or on the Confederate sides. See, and once again, this flag was called the Rebel flag when I was growing up.
Okay.
To the point that I was with a girlfriend in Colorado talking to her mother, and it came up. This is when they were taking it down in South Carolina, and I called it the Rebel flag, and they said, "What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
It's that big of a cultural, like, what it's even called, what it means. They, like, people outside don't understand, and so it represents, okay, and another name, you know, that the upper class called the war from the South was the War of Northern Aggression. You see, because this war was on our soil. It was our states that were invaded. It was our cities that were burned. It was our crops that were burned. It was Georgia that was purposely, quote, made to howl, burnt to the ground. It was our women that were raped. Okay? If you weren't conscripted, wouldn't you pick up your gun at that point?
Well, of course.
And should you be ashamed of that?
No.
And tell me, we're going to get into words like traitors in a moment. Who's a traitor? Okay? Which is more traitorous? People demanding that they leave their country and become their own country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a federal government denying their right and going and using scorched earth tactics to stop it. Which is more traitorous? People leaving their government or government murdering their people? Right? This might be why this flag and why Southern pride holds a little bit of meaning for some people and why they're so defensive about it. And you know what I'm saying? It's very complex. It's hard to articulate. Not everyone can do it, but it's a feeling. You know, my grandfather, he's 78 or 80 right now, on my other side. He still flies the Confederate flag on his property. Now, he's the reason I'm not white. You see, he married a young mixed woman that he met when he was in the Navy. So we come from a long military tradition that I didn't take part in, and so did knowing better here. He also, from what I can tell from his video, served in Iraqi freedom. So it holds a. For one, it represents that wound.
Mm-hmm.
And you can probably understand why people from the outside would like to take that symbol away. And why we would want to hold on to it so hard. And we'll get more into it again when he actually not only attacks the flag here, but Southern pride itself, the clip that brought us here in the first place.
Words, then this says a lot more than just the Confederacy. It's a symbol of what
Damn
the
right.
Confederacy stood for. And no,
Wrong.
not states' rights. Slavery and white supremacy over black people. There's a reason why the neo-Nazis were walking around looking like this. That's a Nazi flag. Pretty easy to figure out what it is and what it means. I don't really know what this flag is, but this seems a little out of place if it's just a symbol of states' rights next to the Nazi one.
Do you remember
Well,
the flag
hang
that I
on,
went back
hang
and
on.
showed earlier?
Yeah, but give me a second. Just because somebody carries it there doesn't mean they know A, what it was for, and B, it belongs there.
Don't get me wrong. There is a minority of people that do see it as a racist symbol, for, like, you know, white people that see it as a pro-Confederate
Sure.
symbol. Of course, every symbol means different to every person. That's what a symbol is. All right, it's a fill in the blank.
Yeah, but what my point is if the guy was sitting there with a Canadian flag,
Yeah.
would you then and you can't say that the Canadian flag is clean from oppression, right? Because
True.
we did fuck up the natives, and we had residential schools all the way into the 90s. My point is just because that flag is being held by somebody in that line, I don't have an opinion on it one way or another. I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you. But I'm just saying that flag being in that one position at that one time does not mean what he's saying it means.
Well, it is used by racist groups, right? That's
okay, but that does, just because
yes.
they use it doesn't mean that it's
they
racist.
also use American flags, and that's why I went back and paused it when they was next to a swastika flag was an American flag in the earlier clip, right? And the whole thing earlier about there is the flag for the spirit and the flag for the officers, right? That's the American and the rebel flag.
Yeah.
Right? Who turned and committed a genocide together, finished a genocide together. All right. So if ours is dirty, so is yours.
This used to be a Hindu symbol for thousands of years.
Boy,
then
oh boy.
some jerk in the 1930s used it and changed its meaning for everyone forever. If I were to get a tattoo of this and try to tell people that it was just a symbol of good luck,
No,
nobody
hang
would
on.
believe.
Press pause. No, it didn't change everyone forever. You go to Japan and you show that symbol. You go to China and you show that symbol. Hell, you go to the Hindus and the Buddhists that were using that symbol before. They are still using that symbol. They have no idea what it means.
That's right.
Carry on, sir.
That's right. As far as that goes, you know, and once again, you seem like a real nice fella, Mr. Better. But fuck you in your ass for comparing us to Nazis. Okay? Hey, Dave, how many people did we put in the ovens? How many countries did we invade?
At that point, zero.
Zero. Right. We were invaded. Okay. All right. So a people declaring independence, once again, for a bad reason. For a bad reason. People declaring independence for a bad reason is not the same as trying to conquer a continent of sovereign powers.
But hang on. I'm going to push you back a little bit here, Dustin. Would if there was a place right now that you knew for a fact owned slaves, a country, and they beat their slaves and they bred their slaves.
Okay, so Somalia exists, and we're talking about it.
Yeah. So and Libya. Would you not think it was a good thing for the U.S. to go in there and physically stop it?
Yes, but this is 200 years later.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And if we were still practicing slavery today, I would say that intervention is needed. Okay. But like I said, in all likelihood, but between industrialization, invention, and the British shutting down the transatlantic slave trade, it was destined to end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I said, look, in the end, I prefer the United States the way it is. And by the way, this is less like let's say, I think a good analogy would be like, how the UK just voted to leave the EU.
Mm-hmm.
So if the EU had a standing army and had more power, it would be like, now Germany sends in troops to stop them from leaving because they don't want open borders, right? Which is a human rights issue. And in 100 years, we might look back and so you see what I'm saying?
Except Britain would fuck them up.
It's not an equivalency, but it's a fair analogy to be made.
Sure.
It's something.
Sure. And the other point I would make, kind of like to contradict my point, is that the people that declared the war and sent the soldiers down south were racist. They were like, Lincoln was a racist.
Yep.
Right? It wasn't like he was like,
we're gonna
it's
get to
not.
that. We have more video. It's short, but we have more video.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I know, dude. It's a lot here.
I should have watched it prior.
Yeah. I think he mentioned, maybe he didn't.
Up to this point, you believe that this flag is just a symbol of states' rights or Southern pride. That's not what it means anymore. Some jerks have taken it and changed it. It's just plain racist.
No, and a minority of people do not get to dictate what a symbol means.
And if pictures say 1,000 words, then a 3D statue in a public place says 1,000,000.
And racist is one word. So there's still a lot of words left to be said.
It's not just a monument to the person, it's a monument to what they stood for. What are they remembered for? The argument that removing statues will erase history is dumb. First of all, they aren't destroying the statues, they're simply moving them to museums. But even if they were destroying the statues, that wouldn't remove them from history books.
No, but it will prevent the very nuanced and deep dive conversation that the public is having about these issues right now, and that we're having.
And the statues would be the first. Next would be the books.
Right. And it's not just these statues, and we're just about to get into that now that he's moving on.
You haven't seen a Hitler statue, yet we all know who that is. Likewise, the where will it
Another comparison to fucking Nazis.
end argument isn't valid either. Nobody wants to take down monuments to Washington and Jefferson. They were founding fathers and presidents. They
Yes,
were
there are.
Okay, well, this is
There
a
are
year
people
ago.
that do one. Yeah.
This is a year ago. So didn't people just took down a statue of your founding father?
Yeah, they had to apologize and put it back.
Okay,
But yeah,
but they went for it. Okay.
They went for it, but then in Montreal, some people spray painted red blood, like red paint for blood, and a guy was arrested in Saskatchewan for pouring blood on the hands of a Sir John A. Macdonald statue. So I mean, it is happening here, and like obviously he was the architecture of the native school systems and a lot of the issues, but this is a subject that I obviously know more than the one that you're talking about. There's a duality to this. Like
There's a duality to everyone.
Yeah, so he was the first standing prime minister to give Native people voting rights. Now they had to live in the city, not on the reservation, but he still gave them voting rights. It was taken away by the next prime minister that came into office. But I was having I wouldn't say an argument, but a disagreement about Sir John A. Macdonald with a First Nations fellow, and he didn't know that. He thought that the first time that they had gained the right to vote was in the 60s. But I mean, he was calling Sir John A. Macdonald a genocidal maniac. My point was, if he was, then you wouldn't be here, right? He for sure was trying to commit cultural genocide. He was trying to take them into Canadian society and wipe out their culture and just have them live as white Europeans.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying is right. It's fucking completely wrong.
Yeah.
But there's a difference.
Yes.
There's a big difference. And I think with this, if I knew more about it, I would probably see duality as well. You know?
Well, I would say that, okay, in order to achieve great things, you have to have an extreme confidence and an extreme will. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to enact what you think and feel. That's the only way you can do things like found a fucking country. Okay?
Yeah.
And no one's perfect. Everyone is fallible. So just as much as they are going to exude their excellence, they are going to exude their failures. I think it's inevitable.
Scotland's worse.
And
before we get back into that, Scotland's worse. He was born in Scotland, and they've wiped him from every government website.
That's shitty. That's shitty. We'll talk about the Scottish in a little bit. So in the weeks and months following his video, unfortunately, 8 monuments were attacked. Recently, Silent Sam was destroyed, which was not a general. That was one of those soldiers that were fighting and invading federal government, killing and fucking raping and burning and destroying. They destroyed him. Lincoln was burned. Okay. Jefferson was defaced by Black Lives Matter protesters. Okay. And you know, and once again, I made the statement earlier that the secession was about slavery, but the war was about secession. Okay, and here's a few interesting things to consider. One is this letter from Lincoln, which is, if I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save this union. Okay? So the soldiers in the South were fighting for their lives. The government in the North was fighting to preserve the Union. Okay? I don't know if you know this, Dave. 4 slave states stayed with the Union. Okay? They allowed people that wanted to go and fight for the Confederacy to do so, but the North, the best I can tell, someone correct me, drafted out of these states as well. So you have people that are in slave states fighting for the Union. Okay? The war is halfway over before the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay? Freeing slaves. It's difficult to say that this war was over slavery. Secession was about slavery. The war, like every war, is very deep and complex. Like every war. And the winner always wants to make it very simple. Always, every time.
Well, to the winner goes the spoils, my friend, and they write history.
Here is one last reason why you want to play up slavery and play down secession if you're particularly the Northern government at that time, the Union government. In the Jefferson Davis trial, you notice no one celebrates Jefferson Davis?
Mm-hmm.
That's because it's not about the
American.
Confederacy. Well, here's the thing: we should celebrate General Lee's birthday.
Okay.
Okay. We don't give a fuck about Jefferson Davis. He was the president of the Confederacy, by the way.
Oh, okay. You guys actually had a president?
See, that's how much it doesn't matter. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. Of course we did.
Okay.
He was a senator in Mississippi, I do believe.
Okay.
Before. It's some one of the states.
And how long did the Confederacy last?
Just for the war, which was...
Yeah, but how long did that last?
Oh, man, you caught me with my pants down. The exact dates I am... I'm less than certain about. April 12th, 1861 to 1865, 4 years.
Oh, okay, so enough time to get a hand job.
By the way, another reason people might want to memorize this is it was the most bloody war in American history, still is, and was more bloody than all wars up to about halfway through Vietnam.
And the bloodiest Civil War in human history.
In human history, right?
Yes.
Right. So to say those soldiers shouldn't be memorialized, I think is fucking heartless, man. It's terrible.
I had a boss when I was, I'm going to say 18, 19 years old. I was driving forklift.
We're like 3 hours, by the way. We're Joe Rogan level, but let's go.
Yeah, that's okay. He would drive down to the States. Remember, I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
To do the reenactments. And he would play a Confederate soldier. Like that was what his part of the reenactments were. I always wonder, I'm like, dude, you're Canadian. Why are you going down there to do the Civil War reenactments? And he was just a war buff, and that was an interesting war to him.
But I mean, it's an interesting war to me. There's a lot of reasons to just look interested in war. It was the precursor to World War One. It ended with Gatling guns and some trenches. Anyway, this one last thing here. This is about the Jefferson Davis trial. You see, he was to be tried for treason. What do you think happened, Dave? You think he was found guilty? Let's read. In 1867, he was prepared to argue that he did not betray the country because once Mississippi left it, he was no longer a U.S. citizen. Everybody thought it was going to be a test case on the legality of secession, says Cynthia Nicoletti, a University of Virginia legal scholar whose book Secession on Trial is due out in August. Sears people believed he had a chance of winning. So the trial about the war was going to be about secession, not about the legality of being slave owners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm a little bit confused on the leaving part. So like here, if your province wants to leave, you have a referendum. You get more than 50% of the vote, and that's it. You can leave. Are you guys not allowed to do that?
We were. Well,
You
that's
were.
what the case was going to be about, whether or not
Okay.
states had the right to leave. And
Okay.
once again, we were closer to the EU than the United States federal government at this time.
Okay.
And a
Okay.
lot of people didn't expect it to last. And we, once again, we were not this coast to coast solidified. Even like when people talked about the United States, they talked about them as a group rather than a single entity, like the grammar used at that time.
Do you think that a lot of the America rah rah like my country's super patriotic, but they're not as
Real quick,
loud
he was
and over the top.
pardoned.
Okay.
By the way, he was pardoned because they were so unsure about being able to actually convict him, which would make the North war criminals.
Yes.
So once again, why might people want to hold on to this? Go on, Dave.
Do you think that the America rah rah rah, like the flags everywhere and the over the top 4th of July celebrations? Now, I'm not saying that we're any less patriotic than you guys, but we're just not as loud about it. Do you think that was designed to kind of bring the country together after having such a bloody civil war?
Yeah, there's actually serious efforts on both sides to push a national unified identity. It's called the Reconstruction era. It's
Yeah.
whole part of
It explains a lot.
Yeah.
It explains a lot. And I'm the first to admit that I'm probably just as, or if not more, patriotic about where I live. Just
Right.
we're not as like, we don't like, well, I in my house have a flag, but I don't have a flag outside, and we're not as like, we don't go places and chant Canada. You know what I mean?
Well,
Where you hear
look,
you-
that's dying
say.
fast.
It is, eh?
It's dying fast. Yeah. Let's push this video.
Hey, sorry, man.
It's fine.
Slave owners, but that's not what they are remembered for. Martin Luther King was an adulterer. Gandhi was an extreme racist and weird pseudo-pedophile, but that's not what they were remembered for either. What is Robert E. Lee? A Confederate general. The argument that they were rebels, traitors,
refused to
and
turn on his
losers,
people.
while true, doesn't help either. It's not a statue to them losing. And there are statues to historical losers everywhere. This is a statue of William Wallace. If you saw Braveheart, you know that he also lost. But that's not why he has a statue in Scotland. It's because he's a symbol of the Scottish national identity and fought against English tyranny. There are many legitimate reasons to remove Confederate statues, but bringing up the fact that they lost the war isn't
Did
one of
he
them. So
really
what is-
just try to use Braveheart as a accurate historical context? Like, the figure William Wallace existed, but did he really just, because that was mostly made up, right?
Yeah, I mean the figure was real, and he
Real, but
and
the
he is
mo-
celebrated.
Yes,
I mean,
but the movie was
yeah, he was talking
complete-
about the movie. I don't believe it. He's talking about the real figure. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna give him that credit. Yeah, no.
Okay, but he did say Braveheart. If you've seen Braveheart,
He did. I think he was so you knew what who he was talking about.
Okay,
I think
okay,
he was just
okay.
making a pop culture
Okay,
reference. No,
okay.
I'm on his side here. Which
Okay.
by the way, this back here behind me is the Alabama flag. You see, it's the rebel flag without the stars in a different color pattern. What it actually is St. Andrew's cross, or the Scottish cross. So not only the South has a very he's setting me up for this.
What is a Confederate general statue for? If you said the Southern identity, you need to ask yourself what that means. Because unlike the Scottish, the Southern identity is rooted in racism. Thinking that the Civil War was over states' rights or Southern...
Okay, so you know what one thing the Southern identity is rooted in? The Scottish identity.
Mhm.
This is St. Andrew's cross behind me, which is what I was getting at, which is the patron saint of Scotland. And at the time of the Civil War, Alabama itself was, I think, 75% Scottish. So Dixie, the Confederate States, this pride, the genetic component of it is of Irish, Scot-Irish, and Scotch, which is three different, right? There's the Irish, the Scottish, and the Scotch-Irish. And so the Scotch-Irish settled Appalachia, and the Irish and the Scottish settled the eastern seaboard, more Scottish in the south, but a lot of Irish too. And so there's a very, 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 very long, going back to Julius Caesar, hate between the Scottish, the Irish, and the Anglo-Saxons. Goes back a long way. Like, in Game of Thrones, the wildlings are the Scottish beyond the wall, the borderlands. That like the wall is an actual wall that was built by the Romans.
Yes.
So that's what Scotland is. That's what Ireland is. It's the parts that couldn't be conquered by the Romans. And they had a particular culture that they brought with them. A really good book about this is Cracker Culture by Grady McWeeny. And another good book on it is Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. It's a really good book that explains that there is a large cultural difference between the Southeast. It's of rough and tumble, more of a honor culture, a willingness to fight, disorganized, less focused on business. A lot of problems with it, man. A lot of problems. Not so focused on education, right? But this is the beginning of what the South is and what helps it form its identity. And then you also have the largest population of blacks, as the map showed us earlier, has always been in the South. And look, black identity in the United States and Southern identity have been intertwined from day one. Okay?
Okay.
They are partially the same thing. So what, outside of racism, what is Southern pride? Part of it is what it means to the good parts of the culture that the Scottish and the Irish brought with them, which is like Protestantism, this decentralized type of religion they set up in the United States. They stayed tribal, Gaelic and Celtic to the very end, right? And stayed rebellious to fighting Irish. You can find endless literature where they talk about the Irish just like black people, and this is hate on the South.
Of course, no dogs,
it's
no
always passed
Irish.
off as Irish hate, but most of them are in the South.
Yeah.
Like it's hate against the South. Like we were always known as dumb, stupid, and here's the thing, that's a stereotype like most based in truth, right? And that's also genetics intermixing with environment, because there was hookworm bringing down the IQ of the South for a long time, bringing down industriousness and intelligence by having an overburden on the nutrition system.
I really do think it's amazing how I guess I shouldn't, but it's just because it's from so long ago. I'm just amazed how the same groups of people that populated and brought forth your country, well, still hate each other, but also brought forth my country as well, right?
Yeah. But I don't think they segregate as much in your country. You don't still have the same divides. You didn't have a war. Ours probably would have went away if it wasn't for the fucking war.
Hang on. We had the Protestant Catholic War here, which you guys didn't have.
And they had that in the UK as well, yeah.
Yeah, that came over here from the UK. You guys didn't have that, and we had the French English Civil War. Yeah. Like, so we did have civil war, just not as extreme. But I'm just saying, like, when I think you're probably the only other country, if I was speaking to a citizen, they would say, the Irish, the Scots, the Scotch-Irish and the English settled my country, and I would be like, yeah, they did. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting.
Yeah. So back to Southern pride. There's the whole Scot-Irish thing. The we were never conquered, I guess, until they came that last time and fucking finally won. Another part is the rich musical heritage that we have here in the South. American music, as it is today, was born in the South and was born largely in Appalachia. It's a mix of hillbillies and black culture. It starts with bluegrass, it starts with folk, Americana, turns into blues, and then you get rock and roll. Right, then you get country music before rock and roll, jazz. Where did it all come from, Dave?
The South.
It all came out of the South, right? You get your Seattle movement, you get your British invasion, you get your West Coast sounds.
Yeah, but even like, and this is way off topic, but even without the dirty blues sound, like that distorted amplifier, you don't get the British invasion. You don't get Led Zeppelin because
It all comes
they were
from
all
us.
they were all influenced by that dirty amp sound
Right.
of the blues.
So
Right.
so you're and to name the areas, like, bluegrass and folk came out of Appalachia, country came out of Nashville and Tennessee, southern rock came out of Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and a lot of blues came out of Muscle Shoals. You got your Mississippi Delta blues coming out of the Mississippi Delta, all right? It was all right here in the Southeast, and there's this pride. We're also still known as the people that believe in leaning on yourself, right? Small government, of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not a recent thing that the government, that Republicans have fooled us into. It's who we always have been, who we always are. We would rather die on our feet, starving, than live on the teat. And that's still an attitude that we're losing. We take off our shoes when we come inside, Dave.
I remember I asked you that the other day.
I call every adult that I come across ma'am and sir if I have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Right, in real life, all doors open for everyone. Okay, but at the same time, there's a savagery to it, and what you have, once again, this blend of culture. If you believe in the beautiful mixing of culture, you should love the South, right? Because you had British aristocracy largely owning the plantations, and that's where you get this very good posture, genteel, fancy clothes plantation owners. Okay, the underclass of the Scotch and the Irish, the borderland people that moved in, and then you have the slaves that were there, and then the three came together, and it took an honor culture, and it ended up making the dignity culture, where everyone kept their unique identities but slowly mixed together with pride.
Sure.
Like that's what it means to me, man. You can listen to songs like like the Doobie Brothers, and the Eagles, Seven Bridges Road. This is so old of an argument, David. I'm wrapping up here, man, because we've been at this for a long time. The song "Sweet Home Alabama." Everybody knows it.
Yes.
It is this exact discussion we're having right now between Neil Young and I forget the guy's name from Leonard Skinner, right? Because Neil Young wrote the song "Alabama" and "Southern Man," which was a scorching criticism, right? And in typical fashion, and it's so. I almost want to pull up the words. It's so Southern the way he does it. First, he's happy that he's going home to see his family. He's been disparaged, but he's lighthearted. He's lighthearted about it, and then he says, I hear Neil Young's been talking about us, but that doesn't bother me. And then he brings, like, later in the song, he talks about, in Birmingham, they love the governor, boo, 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 but we're doing what we can. Like, we have our problems and we're fighting them. We acknowledge them. And he says, Watergate doesn't bother me, but doesn't bother you. Tell me the truth. Like, do you care about your corruption and on your side of the line? Are you concerned about the way your politicians are manipulating and cheating? We're trying to find ours. What about you? Do you acknowledge your problems? Right? It's just, and it's that's.
But Neil Young,
was
Watergate,
Canadian.
Canadian, right?
Right. Well, but here's the thing. I get that he's a Canadian. He's speaking, but this is the same criticism we get over and over, man. Like rap. One other thing that keeps it together, and while we'll forever be rebels, man, is like the way the rest of the world sees the United States is the way the rest of the United States sees us. Right? This uncultured, fucking slack-jawed, loud, obnoxious, gun-toting, fucking fat asses, and it's halfway true. You know, because stereotypes are based in a little bit of truth, man.
Yeah.
And man, we have our problems, but I should no more be ashamed of my flag and my people than anyone else should be of theirs. I have a lot of pride, man.
Sure.
I
get that.
I'm proud that my family has fought in pretty much every American war, period. Revolutionary War, 1812, Civil War, all of them.
Sure. Why wouldn't you be? Of course you would be.
Right. So, you know, why would I be ashamed that we fought for the Confederates? Like, they were defending their family. They were defending their people.
Well, I would say it would depend on the reason why they were fighting, right? Like, I would have to know that individual.
I would have to know there was individuals as well. But
but if they were like, I'm fighting because I love slavery, then fuck them.
I'll say that one of them in particular defected from the Confederate Army, would find Union soldiers and cut their hands off and then set them free. So I think it was personal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's about slaves. I think that's about you're destroying everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got a little emotional here, Dave. Like that's how, you know, just like you're patriotic for your country, I'm patriotic for my country. But once again, we're not so centralized here.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
we
like
it local.
Like I said, my shit isn't. I don't feel like my country. Like if you look it up right now, it's going to say that Canada's, if not the most, one of the most stabilized democracies on the planet. But at this point, I don't feel like it's working. And there's evidence to back that, right? So I do get it, man. I do understand.
Yeah. Well, I hope I didn't come off as too much of a bigot here.
Well, you're super racist, but other than that, you're a good guy.
Yeah. You know, I hope I made my case. I hope if Mr. Better ever comes across this video, he'll better understand what motivates people to be proud. It's everything from our military service to our resilience to fight to our love of the outdoors. The fact that we have more stars in our skies because we have less lights on at night. You know, there's 1,000. We have the largest unexplored, you know, cave system here in Alabama. You know, we have some of the best game fishing, deer hunting, man. Anyway,
where is Mr. Knowing from?
You're gonna laugh. Hawaii.
Okay. Oh.
He's from Hawaii. Oh. He's a military brat. His family's in the military. He joined himself. He grew up in Hawaii. I don't know if he was born there, but he grew up there. He's talked about it.
Okay. All right.
Went to college on GI Bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna fault him for any of that shit.
Look, man. Like I said, I think he's a good guy. I'd have a beer with him. I would sit down and talk to him. I just think that he has a misunderstanding about who we are here and what we do. You know.
Sure.
Look, when I didn't know my mother growing up. When I met her husband, he's this New York guy, older. She goes, we'll have to go visit him in Alabama sometime. They're living in Florida, and he goes, don't they hang people in Alabama? Like that's our own country. Dave, you've only found one insult that you'll always get a reaction out of me for. What is that?
Oh, I'd call you a Yank.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're north of the fucking line.
well, no. You guys are see what's south of our line. That Yanks. Anything south of our line is Yanks.
Well, we draw our line a little bit further south, right along the Ohio River. So, Dave, does it bother you that I've been flying that flag for a good hour now?
Oh, I gotta tell you, man. It has no cultural or historical context for me. I think what I do find I find it super funny when I see Canadians wearing rebel flags. I find that super funny.
Dude, I found a guy in Switzerland wearing a Confederate shirt and had a Confederate flag, or excuse me, a rebel flag, rebel shirt.
Mm-hmm. I'm just like,
they brainwashed me into saying it, Dave.
Yeah. I've actually always known it as a rebel flag, to be honest. Yeah.
Right.
To be honest with you, I've always known it as the rebel flag. I didn't. I thought that the rebel flag was interchangeable with the Confederate flag. Like you could say either or, but I've known it as the rebel flag.
And like rebel, like my grandfather, I sit and he reminisces about being a young boy, and he told me, growing up in a house with one light bulb,
Sorry.
Do what you're doing. Finish.
There, done.
Okay. He said, we were proud to be Southern, and we were rebels, and to me, Dave, growing up, the word rebel was interchangeable with free, wild, uninhibited.
Well, that's what the word kind of means, right?
Right. Why would we be ashamed?
Yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap this up, man. This is super.
It is.
Alrighty. You pressed that shit already.
Nope, I haven't. Should I?
Oh no, I thought you pressed stop already.
Nope, I just put my finger on it.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, well, that was the show for tonight. To the first gentleman, what was his name? Brock?
Brody.
Brody. No worries, man. Don't be sorry that you didn't enjoy the show. I get it. You're a fan of Mr. What did I call him again?
Hexenhammer. Oh, Dixon
Hummer.
Dixon
Hummer. Man, you should have attacked. But in all honesty, you should have come after me for my ad hominems. Like I could have done.
And Dave, you probably could have come a little more prepared, which with like I did here with a lot of articles and things like that.
Yeah, but he didn't present anything. So
yeah, true.
What like fair it's enough, not like enough. This video was if he had brought a bunch of wrong stats, I would have brought the proper stats. What can be presented without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
That's very true. And if I would wrap up, back to the whole racial differences thing real quick. We recently found a finger that's about 88,000 years old in the Middle East. Okay. So that means for probably, let's say, 88,000 at least years, about 4,000 or 5,000 generations of separation between sub-Saharan Africans and those that left. That's a little bit of time for there to be a little bit of change.
For sure.
And why would it affect everything else except for personality and adaptability when intelligence is one of our survival mechanisms?
Sure.
Why would that evolve the same in every environment?
Doesn't make anybody less human, though.
Does not make anyone less human. It's just that's why it's such a losing argument, man. Sucks. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Everyone have a good night.
Yeah. Later.